Chapter 1199. With just one punch, Chu Xiu more or less knew Qinqingdi's strength. The path of true fire body refinement was countless times more difficult than normal martial arts cultivation, but once there was a breakthrough, it would also be countless times more powerful. Before Qinqingdi broke through, he could practically kill a true fire spirit refinement expert with one punch. Now that he broke through, he could also kill a heaven and earth mysterious realm expert with one punch. This kind of battle strength seemed to not exist in the early and middle stages. As long as he broke through, he would be at the peak. At this moment, Qinqingdi was a little depressed and said, "Kid, why aren't you fighting anymore? I know that you are still far from your peak strength. Last time, I fought with that old guy from Windcloud Sword Tomb, but it was very unpleasant. That old guy has a false reputation, and he couldn't beat him, so he had to use the trump cards of Windcloud Sword Tomb. Boring, not satisfying." Chu Xiu smiled and said, "If Alliance Master Chen wants to satisfy himself, I can give you this opportunity. This time, I came to find Alliance Master Chen because I actually have a very important matter to tell you." Hearing Chu Xiu say this, Qinqingdi's face also showed a touch of solemnity. "Oh, what is it?" Qinqingdi started from scratch and built such a huge foundation of the World Alliance, so naturally, he was not a simple brute. Right now, Chu Xiu was the sect master of the Kunlun Devil Cult, a person who ruled over the world. For him to specially come here to tell him an important matter, it could be imagined how important this matter was. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "This matter is of great importance. Let's find an absolutely safe and hidden place to talk." Qinqingdi waved his hand and brought Chu Xiu and Xie Xiaolu to a secret room and said in a deep voice, "Can you say it now?" Chu Xiu nodded and said with a solemn expression, "This matter concerns a very big secret of mine. I came to tell you this because I have something that I need your help with, Alliance Master Chen. Furthermore, I believe in Brother Xie and Alliance Master Chen's character. Regardless of whether Alliance Leader Chen agrees to this or not, please don't spread this news." Qinqingdi waved his hand and said, "You don't have to worry about that. Let's not talk about your relationship with my family's brat. I, Qinqingdi, am not the kind of person who talks too much." Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Do you know where I went when I disappeared for a year?" Xie Xiaolu couldn't help but ask, "Where did he go?" Chu Xiu said solemnly, "He went to another world." After saying that, Chu Xiu told Qinqingdi everything about the Daluotian. Apart from the core matters like Dugaweiwei, he didn't hide anything else. After hearing that, Xie Xiaolu's jaw dropped. He had an expression of shock on his face. He was so shocked that he couldn't say anything. Even Qinqingdi was unable to maintain his calm. He too had an expression of shock on his face. The existence of the Daluotian, another world. To a cultivator like Qinqingdi who came from a humble background and did not know much about the ancient era, this came as a huge shock. Chu Xiu paused for a moment to allow the two of them to digest the information. Then he said, "That's why I came here this time. I want to ask Alliance Master Chen to help me get out of this predicament and repel that half-step martial immortal from the Sanskrit school. At the same time, as a price, Alliance Master Chen and Brother Xie can freely travel between the Daluotian and the lower realms. Even the elites of the World Alliance can enter the Daluotian to train. However, they can't move about freely. You can only tell them that it's a mysterious realm and they can only stay there to train. What do you think of this condition, Alliance Master Chen?" After a long while, Qinqingdi knocked on the table and said, "Truth be told, you're actually trying to make me your fighter. However, I have no reason to refuse your condition." To Qinqingdi, the origin energy of heaven and earth within the Daluotian was actually not very useful to him. True fire tempering one's body, not absorbing the origin energy of heaven and earth to accumulate power. Thus, it was not very useful to Qinqingdi. However, to be able to fight against a half-step martial immortal was very tempting to the current Qinqingdi. After making his breakthrough, Qinqingdi actually possessed the strength to be ranked on the sovereign list. However, to be honest, there were not many in the lower realms who could fight against him. As for Chu Xiu, he was on the same side. Thus, he could only spar with him. The old celestial master had concealed his strength very well. Even when he fought against Yi Xiaonan back then, he did not use his full strength. However, the World Alliance did not have any conflicts with the Celestial Master Mansion. Why would he go to Longhu Mountain and fight the Celestial Master Mansion to the death? Yi Xiaonan was strong enough. However, he was in closed-door training. The only ones left were the two from the Heavenly Gate and the Sky of Freedom. Chen Qingdi knew that he would not be able to defeat those two. If he were to fight them, he would not be accumulating battle experience. According to Chu Xiu, there were many Daluotian cultivators who had reached the half-step martial immortal realm or the peak of the profound opening realm. It would be enough for him to display his strength. Furthermore, the Daluotian was very useful to Xie Xiaolu and the other cultivators of the World Alliance. In the entire World Alliance, only Chen Qingdi walked the path of body tempering with true fire. Even Xie Xiaolu did not walk that path. Thus, the environment of the Daluotian was most definitely a treasure trove for them. After they were done, Chu Xiu immediately brought Chen Qingdi to the Daluotian. The instant they stepped into the Daluotian, Chen Qingdi and Xie Xiaolu could not help but be dumbfounded. They sighed in admiration at how powerful the spiritual energy of the Daluotian was. After they were done sighing, Chu Xiu brought the two of them out to meet Wei Shuya and the others. Chen Qingdi knew the people from the Kunlun Devil cult. Especially Xie Xiaolu and Lu Fengxian, they were good friends. After a long while, Xie Xiaolu forced a smile and said, "Right now, I feel sorry for those people from the righteous sections. He's still plotting against you, guarding against you and setting up a trap, but you've already started to fight in another world. This is simply unreasonable." From Xie Xiaolu's point of view, those people from the righteous sects in the lower realm were simply pitiful. They had secretly plotted all sorts of schemes, but in the end, Chu Xiu had no intention of playing along with them. Their starting points were already different, so how could they still play? Chen Qingdi waved his hand and said, "All right, enough nonsense. Where is that guy you were talking about?" Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "He's just outside. After surrounding us for so many days, they're probably getting a little impatient. Now is the time to deal with them all at once." At this time, outside Chu Xiu's stronghold, Xinjialua and Ming Xuanyu were still guarding it. In fact, they were not impatient. Xinjialua had time, and Ming Xuanyu had even more time after receiving the benefits. Originally, they were still waiting for Chu Xiu's formation to run out of energy. In the end, who would have thought that the formation's light would dissipate in the next moment? Ming Xuanyu and Xinjialua looked at each other. Was Chu Xiu finally unable to bear it any longer and wanted to fight with them? The two of them immediately led their people over to surround them. Seeing Chu Xiu and the others walk out of the formation, Xinjialua said coldly, "Chu Xiu, are you prepared to surrender without a fight? Obediently return with me and tell me everything about Moriha. I won't touch your subordinates. But if you don't know how to appreciate kindness, let alone the people in your stronghold, you won't even be able to protect Kangwu County." However, at this time, Xinjialua strangely discovered that Chu Xiu's people did not seem to be afraid at all. When facing them, they seemed to have a card up their sleeve. This made Xinjialua puzzled. Could it be that they had something to rely on? Chu Xiu's side did not respond to Xinjialua. Standing beside him, a rough-looking man pointed at Xinjialua and said with an accent that made Xinjialua feel very uncomfortable, "Are you talking about that shiny monk?" Xinjialua was stunned. What the hell was a shiny monk? Just as he was about to say something, he saw Chu Xiu nod. Following that, the burly man also nodded. "All right, then leave this guy to me." Xinjialua was about to say that the other party was boasting shamelessly, but in the next moment, the burly man had already made his move. With a punch, the extreme strength of his physical body shook the void. Everything in front of Xinjialua began to distort. This was a powerful sense of oppression brought about by absolute power. Xinjialua's eyes suddenly widened. Where did this monster come from? Even the experts from the top sects of the southern region, the Battle God sect, could not possibly have this level of physical strength. He formed a seal with his hands and a great sun rose behind him. With a scorching power that could melt everything, It smashed towards Qinqing Di with a loud bang. Although Sanskrit was also considered a branch of Buddhism, in reality, the cultivation methods of Sanskrit were like Buddha but not Buddha, like devil but not devil, leaning towards evil and strange. Just look at Moriha's illusions and Chu Xiu's world annihilation fire. However, only the cultivation method of Solar Divine Palace that Xen Jalua cultivated was open and aboveboard. It exerted the power of the sun to the extreme and could be said to be fierce and imposing. However, in the face of Qinqing Di's powerful punch, he was the only one in the world. So what if it was the great sun? With one hand, he could pluck the moon and pluck the stars. Even if it was the sun, he could also shatter it with a single punch. With a loud bang, the scorching fireball was directly shattered by Qinqing Di's punch. The true sun fire that could smelt divine weapons smashed onto his body, but it could not even burn through his skin and flesh. Xen Jalua's expression changed. The Sanskrit Buddhist seal in his hands bloomed and blocked in front of him. However, in the next moment, he was sent flying hundreds of feet away by Qinqing Di's punch and smashed into the ground, creating a huge crater. At this time, Chu Xiu was not idle either. The destruction formation in his hand slashed towards Ming Xuanyu with a sharp edge that seemed to tear the heavens and earth apart. This person was also in existence at the peak of the heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm, so it was naturally up to him to deal with him. There were still 2 heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm experts in Ming Xuanyu's Bliss Demon Palace branch. Wei Shuya and Shang Tianliang each faced one of them. Under Green Jade's orders, the members of Black Civ tribe roared and rushed towards the Bliss Demon Palace martial artists. Because He Jie was too heavily injured, he did not participate. At this moment, the 2 sides were already engaged in a fierce battle. Chapter 1200. Xen Jalua was still in a daze. This was because before he came to find Chu Xiu, he had already obtained detailed information on Chu Xiu from Linghu Immortal Mountain. He believed that he had a good understanding of Chu Xiu. But now, an unfathomable fellow had suddenly appeared near Chu Xiu's group and sent him flying with a single punch. Anyone with this kind of power could not be a nameless figure even in the entire Daluotian world. Who was this person? Before Xen Jalua could react, Qinqing Di had already charged at him again. He glanced at the scorch mark on his fist and raised an eyebrow. These Daluotian fellows were indeed extraordinary. They had some real skills to be able to injure him, although it was not even a superficial wound. Another punch fell. The powerful fist intent oppressed the surrounding space and made a series of explosions. There was no change. It was such a simple punch, but it was also a punch that had reached the pinnacle of power. With a loud bang, the scorching power of the sun turned into an arrow and exploded right in front of Qinqing Di. But he did not even try to block it. Instead, he punched again. The bow shattered, and Xen Jalua was sent flying. Xen Jalua was once again smashed into the ground, and even his internal organs were shaken. Damn it! Xen Jalua formed a Buddhist seal with his hands, and the image of a Buddha appeared behind him. It had 3 faces and 4 arms, and it held the sun in its hands as it smashed down on Qinqing Di's head. In an instant, the scorching light engulfed everything within 1,000 feet, so bright that it was difficult to keep one's eyes open. The earth could not withstand this powerful force, and sand and stones turned into lava. Xen Jalua panted heavily. He did not believe that his opponent could remain unscathed under this kind of power. However, in the next moment, a figure walked out of the blazing flames and punched out again. The fist intent was even mixed with a strong fighting spirit. Ha! Interesting, satisfying. Qinqing Di's body was scorched red by the scorching power, but this kind of solar true fire, which could melt gold and iron, could not melt his body, which had been tempered by true fire for countless years. Another punch landed, and Xen Jalua was sent flying again. This time, he really could not hold on any longer, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. On Ming Xuanyu's side, Chu Xiu had also exchanged blows with him. The Bliss Demon Palace was a major demonic sect, and Chu Xiu had seen their ruins in the lower realm. Their techniques were inclined towards the sinister, and Ming Xuanyu was the same. He did not know what technique he cultivated, But when he opened his domain, a domain that was filled with sinister and sinister chi appeared. However, this domain did not have any destructive power. Instead, he condensed countless evil ghosts and placed them into the domain. When combined with the domain, it increased the power of the domain by 30%. Chu Xiu had never seen this kind of strange technique that could be created by combining one's own technique and domain. However, it did not matter what kind of sinister ghosts they were. When Chu Xiu opened his god's domain, the 5 elements and yin and yang were inverted and twisted. Everything within the range of his domain was twisted into nothingness. Chu Xiu found Ming Xuanyu's domain very strange, but Ming Xuanyu found Chu Xiu's domain even more strange. He had never seen such a domineering domain before. In the end, a small half of the ghosts that he had painstakingly cultivated were directly dissipated, and this made Ming Xuanyu grimace in pain. With a loud shout, Ming Xuanyu retracted his domain, and a pitch-black long blade appeared in his hand. The entire blade was as black as ink, and only the blade had a hint of scarlet. As the blade slashed down, it actually began to devour all the power in the world, even light. Everywhere that the blade passed through was like a pitch-black eternal night. It was extremely strange. However, in the next moment, the breaking formation in Chu Xiu's hand was also unsheathed. The entire sky instantly lit up, illuminated by the sharpness of Chu Xiu's blade. Wherever the blade pointed, an endless amount of sharpness descended. The powerful force directly sent Ming Xuanyu flying. Even his sinister long blade let out a mournful cry. His saber could indeed absorb any kind of true qi. However, Chu Xiu's ethereal slash and the saber will of the breaking formula had brought out its sharpness to the extreme. It did not contain any kind of strange power, so how could he absorb it? In the next moment, the long blade in Chu Xiu's hand directly slashed down toward the ground, and the earth destruction of the 7 extremities was unleashed. In an instant, the ground trembled as if an earth dragon was turning over. Ming Xuanyu felt that something was wrong. He wanted to soar into the sky, but it was already too late. On the cracked ground, countless astral blades wrapped around him, making him look extremely wretched. When he finally managed to break free from the entanglement of the blade aura, a ghostly murmur rang out from Ming Xuanyu's body. Heaven weeps blood rain fell, and the space above his head was torn apart. The shadow of a demon stretched out half of its body and directly grabbed at him. Ming Xuanyu's expression finally changed. He formed a seal with his hands, and black mist rose around him, turning into a huge storm of demonic qi that swept out. There were even endless wails of evil spirits within it, fighting against the great compassion mantra. Ming Xuanyu glanced at Chu Xiu, and a hint of fear appeared in his eyes. At the same time, he also wanted to retreat. The information that Xian Jialua had given him about Chu Xiu was very old, and in any case, he had severely underestimated Chu Xiu. Although he was not injured and had not used any trump cards, he did not want to continue fighting. Chu Xiu's series of attacks had somewhat exceeded his expectations. In a true life and death battle, even though he was already at the peak of the profound insight of heaven and earth, he still had no confidence in winning. When he looked at Xian Jialua again, he was even more shocked. The burly man on Chu Xiu's side was astonishingly powerful. Xian Jialua threw all sorts of secret techniques at him, but they were all crushed by the burly man with a single punch. No matter what cultivation technique or secret technique he used, he could not withstand a single punch from the burly man. He was smashed into the ground again and again, appearing extremely miserable. Xian Jialua had already reached the half-step martial immortal realm, and was even slightly stronger than him. If Xian Jialua were to lose, how could he continue fighting? At that moment, a series of battle cries rang out in the distance. A large group of barbarians had charged into the Bliss Demon Palace's formation and began fighting. Green Jade sent people to join forces with the barbarians, and the other barbarian tribes had finally arrived. Although they were a little late, they were not too late. Ming Xuanyu's expression completely changed when he saw this. He immediately shouted, "Retreat! All of you retreat!" This kind of formation was no longer something he could withstand. If they continued fighting, his subordinates would definitely suffer heavy losses. As the people from the Bliss Demon Palace began to retreat, Xen Jialua, who had been suppressed by Chen Qingdi all this time and had even been beaten to the point of vomiting blood, no longer hesitated. His figure moved, and a large amount of solar true fire erupted from his body. Like the sun rising from the east, he rapidly flew into the sky and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Chen Qingdi chased after him, but speed was not his forte. He even grumbled gloomily, "We're in the middle of a good fight. Why are you running?" After Xen Jialua and Ming Xuanyu escaped to a safe place, Xen Jialua glared at Ming Xuanyu and shouted, "Ming Xuanyu, what is the meaning of this? It's already been 2 times, and each time, you've been the one to escape first. You've taken my things, yet you don't want to work for me?" Ming Xuanyu said indifferently, "Brother Xen, don't take out your anger on me after you've lost. Does it matter whether I ran or not? Chu Xiu's body is incomparably powerful. You didn't even have the slightest chance to retaliate. You've already lost, yet I'm still persisting. Apart from harming my subordinates, what's the point of this? To put it bluntly, the little things you've taken out aren't enough to make up for my losses." Ming Xuanyu's words were reasonable. He had already lost, so there was indeed no point in continuing the fight. However, Xen Jialua couldn't swallow his anger. He had schemed for so long, and even paid a huge price to get Ming Xuanyu to act. Yet, in the end he returned empty-handed. How could he accept that? Ming Xuanyu consoled, "Brother Xen, it's not that I want to criticize you, but with how powerful the Sanskrit church is, why don't you go back and invite a martial immortal level hall master over? Wouldn't it be enough to forcibly take that Chu Xiu away? Why must you scheme against him yourself?" Xen Jialua calmed down and let out a long sigh. "You make it sound simple, but do you know how serious the internal strife of the Sanskrit church is? I'm not afraid of being laughed at by you, but the Brahma Palace, Shiva Palace, and Vishnu Palace have been fighting for thousands of years. If it weren't for the pressure from the Heavenly Treasure Temple, we might have already started fighting among ourselves. I was just about to take over the position of Palace Lord. Now that I've encountered such a situation that I can't resolve myself, I have to go back and ask someone to resolve it. Who can I ask? The old Palace Lord is already old. If he were to encounter other martial immortals after such a long journey, there might be an accident. The Shiva Palace and the Brahma Palace can help, but who will be the one to be humiliated in the end? It's the Vishnu Palace itself." Ming Xuanyu was slightly surprised. He didn't expect the internal strife of the Sanskrit church to be so serious. Although the Blissful Demon Palace also had internal strife and power struggles, it was kept to a tolerable degree. If it went too far, the Palace Lord would intervene. In the end, the internal strife of the Sanskrit church had clearly reached a degree that would affect the interests of the Sanskrit church. Yet, the 9th-level martial immortal of the Sanskrit church still didn't care about it. It was unknown what he was thinking. "Brother Xen, if you don't choose to go back to the Sanskrit church to ask for help, what are you going to do? It's not that I'm being immoral, but with just the 2 of us, we are definitely no match for Chu Xiu. Also, where did that sturdy man with a powerful physical body come from? It's impossible for someone like him to be a nobody." Xen Jialua snorted coldly. "Chu Xiu has offended many people in the eastern region. The disciple of the Blood River Church's ancestor Blood River was crippled by someone on his side. Also, the enmity between Cold River City and them is not small. I'll think of a way to see if I can provoke." Before Xen Jialua could finish his words, his expression suddenly changed. He took out a palm-sized formation plate from his bosom. The Sanskrit characters on it flickered. When Xen Jialua finished reading the Sanskrit characters, his expression became extremely unsightly. Ming Xuanyu didn't understand Sanskrit. He asked in surprise, "What's wrong?" Xen Jialua clenched the formation plate and let out a long sigh. He said, "Don't worry about Chu Xiu for now." The previous Palace Lord of the Vishnu Palace has passed away. After saying that, Xen Jialua's figure moved. He used his fastest speed to head west. Chapter 12:01. After repelling the people from the Blissful Demon Palace, Chu Xiu's side heaved a sigh of relief. When Chu Xiu saw Ming Xuanyu leading his men to flee, he knew that the relationship between the blissful demon palace and Xen Jialuo wasn't that close. They were merely united because of mutual benefits. Chu Xiu didn't know what method Xen Jialuo had used to make the blissful demon palace help him. Now that Xen Jialuo had been driven away by Qinqing Di, the blissful demon palace would naturally not take the initiative to provoke them. Qinqing Di shook his head as he walked over. He said, "Not bad. The strength of this Daluotian cultivator is truly powerful. His path of martial cultivation is somewhat different from that of the lower realms. However, this person is simply too weak. The outcome of the battle has yet to be determined, yet he has already fled." Hearing Qinqing Di's words, everyone present was speechless. This was still considered the outcome of the battle to be determined? They had personally witnessed how Xen Jialuo was crushed by Qinqing Di. It was truly a miserable sight. In such a situation, if Xen Jialuo didn't flee, he would easily be hammered to death by Qinqing Di. Chu Xiu walked over and bowed to Qinqing Di. He said, "Alliance Master Qin, many thanks." Qinqing Di waved his hand and said, "There's no need to be so polite. You brought me to the Daluotian, and I helped you eliminate your opponents. It's completely reasonable." "Oh, that's right, Chu Xiu. I'll leave that brat Xie Xiaolu with you for the time being. Help me look after him. I plan to travel around the Daluotian and search for some inspiration to make a breakthrough. I'll also find someone to spar with." The corners of Chu Xiu's mouth twitched. Likely, that last bit was what Qinqing Di truly wanted. However, Chu Xiu still warned, "Alliance Master Qin, the Daluotian Empire is different from the lower realms. There are countless experts in the eastern, western, southern, and northern regions. There are several martial immortal level experts in every region. It is best to be careful." Although Chu Xiu's ability to cause trouble was no worse than Qinqing Di's, Chu Xiu's and Qinqing Di's were two different things. Everything that Chu Xiu had done was either related to his interests or his reputation. As for Qinqing Di, he simply wanted to find someone to fight with, so he wanted to go out and have fun. He wasn't Chu Xiu's subordinate, so Chu Xiu naturally couldn't control him. He could only give him some advice. Qinqing Di nodded and said, "Rest assured, I know what I'm doing. Although I am a battle-hungry person, I am not brainless." After saying those words, Qinqing Di suddenly sighed. He said, "Truth be told, if you hadn't brought me to the Daluotian Empire, I really wouldn't know what my next step would be." Chu Xiu was startled. Qinqing Di's current strength could already be considered to be at the half-step martial immortal realm. Furthermore, his physical body was very powerful, and his battle power was outstanding. What was he still confused about? Qinqing Di pointed to himself and said, "In the entire lower realms, I am actually the most special one. Although you also train in the true fire body refinement technique, I can tell that you have trained in a lot of things. There are many paths, and every single one of them will lead you to the pinnacle." Chu Xiu smiled bitterly. Having too many paths was not a good thing. When he was making a breakthrough to the profound access realm, he had felt confused because he had too many paths. Qinqing Di continued, "There are many paths that you can choose from. Yi Shaonan, the old heavenly master, and that old fart from the Ying family, or rather, all the existences in the lower realms that have reached the profound access realm know what path they should take. However, I am the only one who doesn't. Ever since I began training, I have known that no one will accompany me. I will have to do it alone. In the lower realms, I actually made a total of 3 breakthroughs. The first time was when I condensed my true fire body refinement realm. I failed to make a breakthrough to the true fire spirit refinement realm. In the end, I turned to body refinement and succeeded. That was the first time. The second time was not long after I fought against that Heavenly Gate Divine General that you killed. I reached major success in body refinement, and became invincible against those of the same cultivation. The third time was the one from before. I assimilated my body with the world, and was able to use the power of the world to fight against half-step martial immortals. These 3 times were all incomparably dangerous, and all of them were coincidences. So whether or not I can wait until the 4th breakthrough, when my fleshly body becomes a sage, which is comparable to an immortal's body, even I am not sure. The Daluotian continent is incomparably vast, with countless experts. Whether or not I can take another step in the path of martial cultivation will depend on this. I have already instructed the World Alliance to keep a low profile. I will return in a year's time. However, if I don't return in a year's time, help me out a bit and let that brat Xie Xiaolu inherit the position of World Alliance Master. I have offended many people in the lower realms with my bad temper. When I am gone, there will inevitably be people who will cause trouble for the World Alliance. Hearing Qin Qingdi's parting words, Xie Xiaolu's eyes turned red. With a trembling voice, he said, "Master, pow!" Qin Qingdi directly hit him on the head and scolded, "I'm not dead yet, why are you crying for me? Cultivate properly here. When I return in a year's time, if you still haven't made a breakthrough, I will smash open your skull with a hammer and see why I took in an idiot like you." After saying that, Emperor Qin Qingdi took a step forward. Suddenly, there was an explosion in the air, and his figure disappeared. Xie Xiaolu let out a long breath and said, "Brother Chu, please arrange a place for me. I will go into closed-door cultivation right now." Chu Xiu patted his shoulder and said, "Don't worry. Alliance Master Chen established the World Alliance from scratch in the lower realms. He fought his way to where he is now, and the dangers he faced are no less than those in the Daluotian continent. Since he was fine in the lower realms, it will be the same in the Daluotian continent. Although the path he walked is powerful, he is destined to pay more than ordinary people." Xie Xiaolu shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "I'm not worried about my master, I'm worried about myself. If I really don't make a breakthrough in a year's time, with my master's temper, he will really beat me up with a hammer." Chu Xiu, after arranging for Xie Xiaolu to go into closed-door cultivation, Chu Xiu also began to arrange for others to reinforce the formations in this stronghold. After experiencing this matter, Chu Xiu actually felt a sense of crisis. Exen Jalua, a half-step martial immortal, and a blissful demon palace's subpalace, had already caused such chaos here. They even had to find reinforcements from the lower realms. This was indeed quite difficult. Chu Xiu was also helpless against this kind of crushing strength. The Daluotian continent had developed for tens of thousands of years, but how much time did they have for them to develop here? A few years or a few decades? Facing pure strength, other than steadily increasing one's own strength to resist, there was no other way. This kind of thing couldn't be taken lightly. Right now, the only thing that could be considered a trump card was Wei Shuya controlling the rootless sacred flame and pretending to be a martial immortal. To be honest, this move was very useful, but it could only be used once or twice. A fox could borrow the tiger's might, but only once. If it was used a few more times, the tiger's might would completely disappear. After giving these instructions, Chu Xiu didn't waste any time and directly prepared to go into closed-door cultivation. Right now, Chu Xiu's realm was very strange. Strictly speaking, his foundation in power was very deep, so when he stepped into the profound understanding of heaven and earth realm, he directly skipped the early stage of adapting to power and reached the middle and late stage. However, realm wasn't the same as battle power. His battle power far surpassed his realm. Apart from a half-step martial immortal like Exen Jalua, he didn't have absolute confidence in defeating him. He even dared to fight a peak profound understanding of heaven and earth realm existence like Ming Xuanyu. Therefore, the current Chu Xiu was already qualified to reach out and touch that legendary martial immortal realm. As Chu Xiu formed hand seals, the power of his primordial spirit rapidly depleted. At the same time, in the High Heaven sect, the sect master of the High Heaven sect, Fang Yinglong, who was in seclusion, suddenly opened his eyes. He seemed to feel a trace of the power of his spirit trembling, but when he carefully examined it, it disappeared. Shaking his head, Fang Yinglong closed his eyes and continued to cultivate. With so many cultivators in the High Heaven sect, it was possible that someone was cultivating a secret technique related to the spirit, so it was normal for there to be some movement. At this moment, in the depths of the spirit cloud realm, Tianhun, who was tied to the bronze pillar, suddenly raised his head and revealed an indescribable smile. The power of his spirit began to move, and runes began to shine. In the misty space, Tianhun looked at Chu Xiu and said with a smile, "I didn't expect you to contact me so quickly. Did you encounter something troublesome, or did you encounter a problem in your cultivation?" Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "It's a matter of cultivation. I want to know what the martial immortal realm is and how to reach it." In fact, Chu Xiu knew about the martial immortal realm. After all, there were many martial immortals lectures on the streets, and many of them were descriptions of the martial immortal realm. But it could also be said that Chu Xiu did not know. The things that were said in the lectures of the martial immortals, each person had a different appearance, and each person had a different understanding. Chu Xiu wanted to know what the true way to the martial immortal realm was. Tianhun pondered for a moment and said, "With your current realm, it's a bit too early to think about the martial immortal realm. But it's okay. You will step into this realm sooner or later. With your speed, it's fast. On the path of martial Tao, from tempering one's muscles and bones to comprehending the heavens and earth, from cultivating oneself to comprehending the world, there is actually no escape from the cage of this world. The heavens and earth will evolve into a domain. Within this domain, you are God. You are an existence that can share the same origin as the world. However, you can understand martial immortals like this. Martial immortals are existences that wish to transcend the world. The laws of the world say that snow cannot fall in summer, but martial immortals can make snow fall in June. They are not simply using their own power to control the weather, but to directly change the laws of this world. In simpler terms, they are using their own power to change the laws, distort the world. Tianhun said in a deep voice, "The word martial immortal is very vivid. Of course, when you are still in the cage of this world, even if you reach the heavens and earth profound understanding, you are still a human. However, when you attempt to transcend the world that you exist in, your level has already surpassed the category of human and become an immortal." In the 9 heavens of the path of martial Tao, every step is actually treading on the sky. When you reach the highest point and trample the entire sky beneath your feet, that is the true transcendence. Chapter 1202. It was the same thing, but everyone looked at it differently. A world in a flower. A world in a person's eyes. Perhaps it was because Chu Xiu was the earth soul of Dugu Weiwei. Even though he had lost all of his memories, Chu Xiu felt that the things that Tianhun told him were very similar to him. After a moment of silence, Chu Xiu suddenly asked, "Since martial immortals walk in the sky, and it has nothing to do with the power they cultivate, why are there so many martial immortals in the upper realm?" Tianhun chuckled. "Who said it has nothing to do with the power they cultivate? If you want to walk in the sky, you must first understand the sky. If you cannot stand shoulder to shoulder with the sky, how can you walk in the sky? The Daluotian world's essence energy is more abundant, and martial cultivators are closer to the upper realm. As such, the chances of martial immortals being born here are higher than in the lower realm. Of course, it's not absolute. For example, Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji. Over the past 10,000 years in the lower realm, there have been martial immortals in every generation. Surmounting the 9th layer of the martial immortal realm will allow one to transcend and become undying. Has anyone in this world reached the transcendent realm? Tianhun shook his head and said, "I don't know. At least, Dugu Weiwei did not know 500 years ago. But now, he knows that by gathering 3 source energies and entering the longevity heaven, he will be able to reach the transcendent realm. Right now, you and I are the stepping stones on his path to the transcendent realm. Do you want to reach the peak, or do you want to be a stepping stone? You must consider it carefully. If you don't hurry up, I'm afraid we can only be a stepping stone to help him transcend this world." As Tianhun finished his last sentence, the power of Chu Xiu's primordial spirit was slightly exhausted. Tianhuan's figure disappeared before Chu Xiu's eyes. Chu Xiu let out a long sigh. His gaze became much more determined, and he continued his seclusion. Qinqing Di had no path ahead of him, so he had to open up a path himself in order to reach the peak. However, Chu Xiu was different. He had many paths ahead of him, but what he lacked the most was time. He had reached the apex of the lower realm. Even in the celestial Daluo, he could be considered to be a character. However, even with that being the case, Chu Xiu was even more anxious than when he was in the lower realm. In fact, he was so focused on his cultivation that he even forgot to eat and sleep. Mei Qinglian and the others were stunned by that. They thought that Chu Xiu had been provoked by what happened with Xen Jiao and was preparing to go against the martial immortal. However, in Chu Xiu, Xen Jiao, and the Sanskrit was, and the sect and the Sanskrit. He was his only enemy. He had only. Chu Xiu was. Chu Xiu. During the period of Chu Xiu's crazy cultivation, the power of Chu Xiu's subordinates also began to grow wildly. Groups of warriors from the Kunlun devil cult took turns to enter the Daluotian world to cultivate. After cultivating, they did not stay idle in the lower realm. The Kunlun devil cult had now controlled the northern Yen and the south. All kinds of resources in the south had been occupied by the Kunlun devil cult. As for the northern Yen, Mei Qinglian had sent a group of people to help the northern Yen suppress the martial arts sections. At the same time, they were also mining and excavating the extreme north. Although these places were bitter cold, it did not mean that they were not rich in resources. Otherwise, the great Guangming Temple would not have established a sect here. All kinds of mineral resources were mined and almost all of them were transported to the Daluotian world for Master Yuanji and Chaoing to build a formation. It was as if they wanted to build the stronghold in the south as the headquarters of the devil cult. It was even more solemn than the lower realm. After all, no one in the lower realm dared to touch the whiskers of the Kunlun devil cult at this time. 4 months later, on a small road at the junction of Jianghu County and Lingluo County, Lu Jianghu was sitting in a pavilion board. He was holding a jar of wine and waiting there, taking a sip from time to time. The entire Kunlun devil cult was very busy. Those who had the strength were busy cultivating in seclusion. Those who had the ability were busy arranging the construction of the stronghold, the formation, and so on. Lu Jianghu belonged to the category of those who had the strength, but he was not willing to cultivate, so he wandered around the entire Jianghu County. In the end, Mei Qinglian could not stand it anymore and let him be responsible for guarding the caravans of Jianghu County. The caravans of Jianghu County not only went to and fro the south, but also to other places. Among them, many caravans had to pass through Lingluo County. Lingluo County was now the territory of Cold River City, so they naturally had to be careful of the tricks of the people of Cold River City. Therefore, Mei Qinglian let Lu Jianghu come over to guard the caravans. Of course, this kind of thing was also very boring in Lu Jianghu's opinion. He could not wait for Cold River City to cause some trouble so that he could exercise his muscles and bones. It was a pity that although Cold River City sometimes did not abide by the rules, they did not intend to take action against the Emperor Sky Pavilion officially. They were too lazy to do these small tricks that could not be taken into public. At this time, Lu Jianghu, who looked leisurely, did not notice that a few miles away from him, in a tall building at the border of Lingluo County, someone was staring at him. The person who crippled you in Lingxiao City last time is this person. He is the one who possesses that magical and evil blood refining secret method? The person who spoke was an old man wearing a blood-red robe. He had a sinister appearance and his eyes were blood-red, making him look extremely evil. His blood-red robe was even more bizarre. It was not purely blood-red, but as if there was a layer of blood flowing on it, as if it was alive. It was extremely bizarre. The old man was the leader of the Church of Blood River, Ancestor Blood River. Very few people remembered his real name. In any case, when he became famous in the eastern region, he was called Ancestor Blood River. In the eastern region, other than the martial immortal experts, the person with the greatest power was this person. The person standing beside him was Yin Shueli, who was almost sucked dry of all his blood and cultivation by Lu Jianghu in the martial arts gambling fight. Previously, although Lu Jianghu did not kill him, he still sucked dry all of Yin Shueli's blood and qi. To a cultivator like Yin Shueli who specialized in the power of blood and qi, it was almost equivalent to his cultivation being crippled. More than half a year had passed, but Yin Shueli had yet to return to his peak. He was still like a mummy. Although he still had the cultivation of the mysterious heaven and earth realm, if they were to really fight, he probably could not even defeat a cultivator of the true fire realm. It's this person. Staring at Lu Jianghe in the distance, Yin Xueli's eyes revealed a tinge of resentment. Ever since he was crippled by Lu Jianghe, his position in the Church of Blood River had plummeted. Even his juniors did not care about him. Even his master faintly felt that he was not important. However, it was fortunate that he brought a piece of news that allowed his master to not completely give up on him. That news was Lu Jianghe's cultivation technique. The cultivation technique passed down by ancestor Blood River was already very powerful in the path of blood and qi. At least, that was what Yin Xueli thought. However, compared to Lu Jianghe, the cultivation technique of the Church of Blood River was really not presentable. The level of Lu Jianghe's cultivation technique was definitely one level higher than the cultivation technique of the Church of Blood River. Furthermore, if it wasn't for the fact that his cultivation technique countered Lu Jianghe, he wouldn't have lost so miserably the last time. He wouldn't have been crushed by Lu Jianghe. Therefore, he immediately told this news to Ancestor Blood River and encouraged him to attack Lu Jianghe and force him to reveal the cultivation technique. However, although Ancestor Blood River was tempted, Lu Jianghe did not leave the Cangnan residence after that period of time. This left Ancestor Blood River with no other choice. Although he was a figure in the Eastern Region martial arts circle and stood on the side of Cold River City, he was not arrogant enough to attack the prefectural governor's residence before the war between Cold River City and the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Although his strength was the same as Xinjiao's, there was no Sanskrit behind him. It was only recently when Lu Jianghe came out to escort the caravan that he found an opportunity. Ancestor Blood River turned his gaze to Yin Xueli and said in a hoarse voice, "Are you sure that this person's cultivation technique is really so powerful that it far surpasses the level of the Church of Blood River? You have to know that he is Chu Xiu's man after all, and Chu Xiu is the prefectural governor of Jianghu County. If we touch his man in Jianghu County, it is equivalent to provoking the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Do you understand the implications of this?" Ancestor Blood River's eyes flickered with a cold light that penetrated into Yin Xueli's heart, causing him to tremble. He had stayed in the Church of Blood River for a long time and knew what kind of person Ancestor Blood River was. Although he was the eldest disciple of Ancestor Blood River and was the strongest, he was the most doted on previously. However, now that he was crippled, he was basically useless to the Church of Blood River, or rather, to Ancestor Blood River. At this moment, as long as he showed the slightest mistake, he had no doubt that his master would take away the last bit of blood essence from him. Yin Xueli clenched his teeth and said, "Master, I dare to use my life to guarantee that the cultivation technique on Lu Jianghe is definitely from the same source as the Church of Blood River. Furthermore, it is more powerful and mystical. As long as we can obtain that cultivation technique, the overall strength of the Church of Blood River will definitely skyrocket. Even if we offend the entire Imperial Sky Pavilion, it will be worth it." Upon hearing Yin Xueli's words, Ancestor Blood River snorted coldly and headed straight for Lu Jianghe. At this moment, Lu Jianghe was still drinking leisurely. However, the next moment, he immediately threw the wine jar aside and looked in a certain direction with a solemn expression. 500 years ago, he had followed Dugu Weiwei into battle. 500 years later, he had followed Chu Xiu and experienced many battles. He was extremely sensitive to killing intent. Someone was going to attack him. The next moment, two blood-colored figures landed. Ancestor Blood River was slightly surprised and said, "Your senses are quite sharp." The moment Lu Jianghe saw Yin Xueli, he knew that Yin Xueli was here to cause trouble. After taking another look at Ancestor Blood River, Lu Jianghe sneered and said, "What's the matter? After beating up the young one, the old one came? You can't beat me in the arena competition, so you brought an old man to cause trouble for me. Aren't you ashamed?" Chapter 1203. Lu Jianghe was someone who had seen much of the world. To be precise, he had once followed Dugu Weiwei to slaughter the entire righteous Jianghu. Of course, he would not be afraid of trash like Ancestor Blood River, who called him an old bastard, in front of him. Ancestor Blood River's eyes revealed a touch of coldness as he said, "I hate people with foul mouths. Today, I'll give you a chance. Hand over your cultivation method, and I'll let you die a quick death." Lu Jianghe's eyes revealed a touch of understanding. It turned out that this old bastard was after his cultivation method. With a sneer, Lu Jianghe directly scolded, "A bunch of good-for-nothings from your Blood River cult, are you worthy of coveting my cultivation method? Are you worthy? You've cultivated for hundreds of years, yet you can't even understand the cultivation method. You've made a good power of qi and blood into a blood-sucking monster. Every one of you has cultivated until you're neither human nor ghost. What a joke! So what if you're a half-step martial immortal? Now you've come to snatch the cultivation method of a true fire spirit refinement realm warrior. Aren't you afraid of embarrassing your master? Oh, I forgot. I heard that you're the ancestor of the Blood River cult, right? The ancestor is a shameless old bastard. One can imagine what kind of trash the people below him are. A bunch of even more shameless trash. Why do you still want to cultivate martial arts when you're like this? You might as well drown yourself in a puddle of urine, lest others laugh at you." Before Lu Jianghe joined the Kunlun Devil cult, he was a pirate. He was a standard lowlife, and his mouth was very venomous. Ancestor Blood River and Yin Shueli were so angry that they were breathing heavily. Their eyes revealed a ferocious killing intent. "Boy, you're very good. After I dig out the cultivation method in your head bit by bit, I'll break your limbs and throw you into the blood prison." Before Ancestor Blood River could finish speaking, an extremely powerful force emerged from Lu Jianghe's body. In an instant, a blood-red light soared into the sky. Lu Jianghe's figure turned into a waterfall and fled towards Cangnan residence. At that moment, Lu Jianghe directly used the blood demon transformation technique to escape. After watching Chu Xiu use the blood demon transformation technique so many times, it was finally his turn. However, most of the time, Chu Xiu used this move to fight with his life on the line, while the first time Lu Jianghe used it, it was to escape. It wasn't that he was a coward. Rather, if he were to rush forward and risk his life against a half-step martial immortal, he would simply be an idiot. Although he had been sealed for 500 years, he still had many years that he had yet to enjoy. He did not wish to die here. Behind him, Ancestor Blood River and Yin Shueli both had dumbfounded expressions. Just now, Lu Jianghe had cursed them in front of their faces. He appeared to be incomparably unyielding, as if he was going to fight them to the end. None of them had expected him to escape just like that. It was so straightforward. However, that made Ancestor Blood River feel a sense of humiliation, as if he had been toyed with. "You're looking to die." Ancestor Blood River roared furiously and chased after Lu Jianghe. Yin Shueli also followed behind. However, his strength was already half-crippled and he could not catch up to the two of them. After all, Ancestor Blood River was in existence in the half-step martial immortal realm. Although his cultivation method was not as profound as the blood demon divine technique, his speed was still very fast when he used the simplest blood escape technique. Seeing Ancestor Blood River right behind him, Lu Jianghe cursed his bad luck in his heart. Back then, when he used the blood demon divine technique in front of everyone, Lu Jianghe did not think so much. In his opinion, he had only crippled Yin Shueli. In the future, if the blood demon church came looking for trouble, they might find the Royal Sky Pavilion or Chu Xiu. However, they would not find him. He had never expected that a large Daluotian faction, although not the top-notch one, still had a half-step martial immortal, could be so poor that they even coveted his cultivation method. "You run quite fast. However, no matter how fast you are, you will not be able to escape from my palm." Ancestor Blood River's blood escape technique exploded with extreme power. The boundless river of blood behind him flowed and enveloped Lu Jianghe. Lu Jianghe had already reached the half-step profound understanding of heaven and earth. At that moment, when he used the blood demon transformation technique, his power was even stronger than most profound understanding of heaven and earth existences. An endless mist of blood enveloped his body. However, the next moment, it turned into an extremely sharp blade and slashed the river of blood apart. Then he continued to escape. Ancestor Blood River exclaimed in surprise. The river of blood that had just been torn apart healed rapidly and turned into countless tiny blood threads that hung behind Lu Jianghe. The tiny blood threads trembled. On one hand, they caused the surrounding essence of the heaven and earth to stagnate. On the other hand, they pulled at the blood in Lu Jianghe's body as if they wanted to pull all the blood out of his body. Lu Jianghe humphed coldly and formed hand seals. In an instant, Ancestor Blood River discovered in shock that the blood threads did not seem to be under his control. They all shattered and dissipated. Ancestor Blood River was not angry. Instead, he revealed an ecstatic expression. He did not have such a method to control his vital energy and blood. The thoroughly meticulous method was an extreme study of vital energy and blood. Ancestor Blood River had started from scratch. He was not from one of the top sections. He had only established the Blood River cult by relying on the remnants of the Blood River sect, an extinct ancient sect, as a foundation. The flaws in his cultivation method were too great. He had been a half-step martial immortal for a long time, but he had not broken through. This was not because of his strength, but because his martial path was not comprehensive enough. If he could seize this guy's cultivation method and integrate it into his own martial path, he might be able to reach a higher level and get a glimpse of the supreme realm of martial immortal. With that thought in mind, Ancestor Blood River laughed wildly. With a wave of his hand, a large amount of vital energy and blood stirred up the essence of the heaven and earth. It smashed wildly towards Lu Jianghe, causing him to vomit blood. Although the Blood Demon Divine technique was clearly a level higher than Ancestor Blood River's cultivation method and could dissolve the opponent's vital energy and blood, the difference in strength between the two was too great. Even if he did not use the cultivation method related to vital energy and blood, Lu Jianghe was no match for him. The two sides chased each other all the way to the outside of Chang'an Mansion. At this time, even Ancestor Blood River was a little anxious. He had also underestimated Lu Jianghe. His opponent's tenacity was simply beyond his imagination. Every time he thought that Lu Jianghe could not hold on any longer, he did not expect that Lu Jianghe would still be able to burst out with strength and continue to escape. Seeing that Lu Jianghe had escaped to the outside of Chang'an Mansion, Ancestor Blood River also knew that there were several heaven and earth mysterious realm experts guarding Chang'an Mansion. He did not have many chances. Ancestor Blood River snorted coldly. His vital energy and blood suddenly burst out and condensed into a blood arrow. Lu Jianghe still wanted to use the Blood Demon Divine technique to break down the blood arrow, but the blood arrow seemed to pass through space, directly passing through the void. The next moment, it had directly pierced through Lu Jianghe's heart. At that moment, blood splattered out, but Lu Jianghe forced himself to make a seal with his hands, and the blood that spilled out was taken back into his body. His speed actually increased by another level, and his figure instantly leaped into Chang'an Mansion. Ancestor Blood River's face was gloomy. He did not expect that Lu Jianghe's tenacity would be so strong. To be precise, Lu Jianghe had studied the path of vital energy and blood to the extreme. Vital energy and blood were vitality, so he could burst out with such tenacity. But the more it was like this, the more he desired Lu Jianghe's Blood Demon Divine technique. But this time, he had let Lu Jianghe escape, and he had no chance. Ancestor Blood River could only leave unwillingly. At this time, in Chang'an Mansion, most of the people were in seclusion, and Mei Qinglian was still taking care of some chores. Suddenly, she felt a chaotic power with the smell of blood rushing in. Mei Qinglian immediately put down the things at hand and went out to check. As a result, she saw Lu Jianghe standing miserably at the gate. His breath was extremely low, and he was covered in blood. There was also a bloody hole in his chest. Seeing Mei Qinglian, Lu Jianghe grinned and said weakly, "F***CK. I've suffered a big loss this time." As soon as his voice fell, Lu Jianghe lost consciousness and fell to the ground with a thud. His last thought was that no matter how strong a woman's cultivation was, she was not reliable. Why did Mei Qinglian's first reaction was to cover her mouth and cry out in alarm instead of helping him up, causing him to fall again? In the secret chamber of the prefectural governor's mansion, Feng Buping had been fiddling with Lu Jianghe's body for a long time. Chu Xiu and the others had already woken up from their seclusion. They looked at Lu Jianghe lying in the middle with a solemn expression. Seeing Lu Jianghe's miserable appearance just now, Chu Xiu was very angry, and so were the others. Although Lu Jianghe had a bad mouth and an unreliable character, it was undeniable that he had helped Chu Xiu a lot in the early days of Chu Xiu's cultivation. He was definitely Chu Xiu's most trusted confidant. Touching one of Chu Xiu's people was equivalent to slapping Chu Xiu's face. No matter who it was, they had to pay the price. After a long time, Feng Buping stood up and said, "Milord, Hall Master Lu is fine. Although his injuries are serious and anyone else would have died, Hall Master Lu's blood devil art is extremely magical. All of his vitality is dispersed into every drop of blood. So let alone a heart exploding, even if his head is cut off, he won't die as long as his true soul is not destroyed. However, he lost too much blood this time. I'm afraid it will take a long time for him to recover." "Then why hasn't he woken up yet?" Feng Buping thought for a moment and said, "Because the loss of blood is too serious, Hall Master Lu hid his true soul in his blood to protect it. This is a subconscious reaction to cultivating the blood devil art. After all, although the body is not important, the true soul is the most important. Now, we can either wait for a period of time until his body slowly recovers and his true soul feels that there is no danger, then it will naturally return. Or we can stimulate him and let his true soul awaken in advance." Chu Xiu nodded and said to Lu Jianghe loudly, "I hereby bestow Lu Jianghe the 5th demon sovereign of our holy church. He will be titled Blood Sea Demon Sovereign." Lu Jianghe, who was lying on the bed, did not have the slightest reaction. Chu Xiu frowned. "It doesn't work?" At this time, Mei Qinglian suddenly said softly, "Red Lotus Demon Sovereign is looking for you." Lu Jianghe, who was lying on the bed, suddenly twitched. He sat up like a carp and looked around. "Where is Red Lotus?" When he saw the surrounding crowd, Lu Jianghe finally realized where he was. He let out a long sigh and said in a resentful tone, "Next time, wake me up in a different way. Don't use Red Lotus Demon Sovereign as a joke." Chapter 1204. Although Lu Jianghe's injuries seemed to be very serious, and even his heart was shattered, everyone knew that he was fine when they saw that he was still in the mood to talk nonsense. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Who was the one who chased you? What trouble did you cause outside?" When Lu Jianghe heard this, he immediately began to complain. "What does this have to do with me? It's because you asked me to cripple Yin Shuili in the Lingshao City Martial Arts exhibition. In the end, his master came looking for me and wanted to snatch my blood demon divine technique. That old bastard called Blood River Patriarch has the strength of a half-step martial immortal. How could I defeat him? It's already extraordinary that I was able to escape from him." In fact, Lu Jianghe was being modest. He was not good at other things, but his ability to escape was definitely stronger than his combat power. With that mouth of his, he had already offended quite a number of people before he joined the Kunlun demon sect. After he joined the Kunlun demon sect, there were countless experts of the righteous path who wanted to tear that mouth of his. The reason he could survive until now, other than the power of the Kunlun devil cult, it was also related to his ability to escape. A cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. "Blood River Patriarch, you're courting death." Mei Qinglian asked, "What do you plan to do this time?" Chu Xiu said coldly, "You have to look at the master before you beat the dog. Old Lu is injured to this extent, can we still sit back and do nothing? I can't afford to offend the Cold River City, but can I not afford to offend the Blood River cult? Since they are called the Blood River cult, I will really make their blood flow like a river." Actually, during this period of time, Chu Xiu had been a bit sullen. He had destroyed the North and South Buddhist sects in the lower realm and shocked the pugilistic world with his demonic might. But what about in the Daluotian? First, he was threatened by the old guy Yi Weikong from the Cold River City. He relied on Wei Shuya's control of the rootless sacred fire to scare him. Later, Exanjalua came to his door and joined forces with the Bliss Demon Palace to besiege his stronghold in the south. He still had to rely on Qinqing Di to help him out. When had he, Chu Xiu, ever been so passive and aggrieved? In addition, Chu Xiu knew his identity and knew that he was the greatest threat. Who knew when he would be swallowed by that legendary existence as a stepping stone? Although Chu Xiu had always been able to maintain an extremely calm and peaceful state of mind, when all these things were added together, Chu Xiu couldn't help but feel like he was about to explode. Chu Xiu did not know what others would do after their mental state exploded, but after Chu Xiu's mental state exploded, he only thought of one thing, and that was to kill. No one knew how the Blood River sect would feel when they bumped into Chu Xiu in such a state. At this time, Lu Jiang he felt that something was wrong. To be honest, when he woke up from his serious injuries, Chu Xiu and the others surrounded him with concern. This made him very touched. At least 500 years ago, he had not received such treatment. After all, with his mouth, even in the Kunlun devil cult, there were many people who annoyed him. Seeing that Chu Xiu was angry and wanted to help him take revenge, Lu Jiang he was also very touched. But the problem is, even though I'm touched, can't you use the right words? What did it mean to hit a dog? Why did these words sound so awkward to him? Lu Jiang he coughed and said, that. Before he finished speaking, he saw Chu Xiu waving his hand. Elder Wei, please take care of Kangwu County. City Lord Shang and the others will follow me to Blood River Patriarch. Also, tell Tangya, Yen Bugui, and the other elites of the holy cult who know about the Daluotian incident to gather. This time, I will really make Blood River Patriarch bleed. Seeing that Chu Xiu rarely looked so serious, everyone present said in a low voice, yes. Chu Xiu's prestige could be said to be on full display at this moment. If it were Su Fengshan and the others, they would definitely advise Chu Xiu to calm down. After all, the Blood River sect was backed by Cold River City. Moreover, they were not within the Imperial Sky Pavilion's sphere of influence. If they acted rashly, there would definitely be repercussions. But if it were Mei Qinglian and the others, they would only follow every word Chu Xiu said, because they believed in Chu Xiu. No matter how crazy Chu Xiu's plan was, he would leave a way out for himself. Chu Xiu patted Lu Jianghe's shoulder and said, Old Lu, you should rest here first. Didn't Patriarch Blood River almost use up all the blood in your body? Wait here. Wait for me to suck out all the blood in that old thing's body, then make it up to you and help you take revenge. Although Lu Jiang he was very touched, he still struggled to get up and said, let's talk about dogs and their owners. Before he could finish his words, Chu Xiu waved his hand and brought his men away. At the same time, he instructed Feng Buping, Divine Dr. Feng, Old Lu's vitality has yet to recover. I'll have to trouble you to take care of him during this period of time. After saying that, Chu Xiu directly left the secret room with his people. Lu Jianghe's hand was stretched in the air, and he suddenly felt helpless. Feng Buping at the side, sect leader is really good to his dog. Oh no, to his people. Our holy sect is really blessed to have such a leader. Lu Jiang he glared at Feng Buping and said angrily, get out. I want to rest. Although Feng Buping's strength was far from Lu Jianghe's, he did not fear Lu Jianghe at all. Hearing this, he curled his lips and said, what are you being arrogant for? If you are beaten up like this again, won't you still have to rely on me? In the Kunlun devil cult, Feng Buping was an extremely special talent. He could cure diseases and refine pills. The entire Kunlun devil cult's alchemy system could be said to be single-handedly managed by Feng Buping. Therefore, although he was not conspicuous, he was extremely important in the Kunlun devil cult. If Master Yuanji was able to mix with a position by Chu Xiu's side because of his obedience and a part of his strength, then Feng Buping relied on 90% of his strength. As for Lu Jianghe, he was really not afraid. Looking at Feng Buping walking out with a look of contempt, Lu Jianghe couldn't help but feel depressed. The elites under Chu Xiu who knew the secrets of the Daluotian had been trained since he was still in the Guanzhong torture room. There were not many of them, only a few hundred people. Some of them were martial artists from the Guanzhong torture room, and some were martial artists from the Yinma lineage, Blue Dragon Society, and Jianghu Hall. Anyway, these people came from a variety of backgrounds, but they could be said to have experienced hundreds of battles. They had even experienced the war between the righteous and demonic factions more than once or twice. Now, after being purified by the Daluotian aura for such a long time, the weakest had reached the realm of unity of man and nature, which was very amazing. At the same time, their efficiency was also extremely fast. When Chu Xiu asked them to gather, they almost used the fastest speed to arrive at the Zhangnan mansion from the stronghold of the southern barbaric land. Chu Xiu made such a big movement and took away so many people. Su Fengshan and others also noticed it. Although they didn't want to ask, Su Fengshan had to bite the bullet and ask, "Sir, you are..." Before Su Fengshan finished speaking, he was interrupted by Chu Xiu. "I'm going to kill people. You stay here and guard the county governor's mansion." After saying that, a group of people directly left the city with a frightening murderous aura. Su Fengshan was dumbfounded, but he didn't dare to say a word. He returned to the county governor's mansion dejectedly. The more he came into contact with this sir, the more he couldn't see through him, and he didn't dare to ask more. The experience of scheming against others in the Imperial Sky Pavilion for many years told him that in the face of Chu Xiu, it was enough as long as he was obedient. The Blood River Church wasn't within the territory of the Imperial Sky Pavilion or other big sects, but in the middle of the Imperial Sky Pavilion, Cold River City, and High Heaven Sect. The eastern region was so big that it was impossible for these big sects to control all the areas. Although the areas they controlled were treasures with the most abundant spiritual energy, for a sect like the Blood River Church, when choosing a sect, they would try their best to avoid the areas controlled by the big sections. In fact, the position of a sect like the Blood River Church was very awkward. If you said they were weak, the Blood River Church had one half-step martial immortal and 2 or 3 people in the profound understanding of heaven and earth realm. That kind of strength already surpassed 99% of the sections. In the entire eastern region, they could be counted as the best. But if you said they were strong, a sect without a martial immortal to oversee it wasn't too strong. Therefore, a sect like the Blood River Church had always had only 2 paths to take. One was to pass it down from generation to generation. Half-step martial immortal was not something that could be reached in every generation. If one generation failed to reach it, the sect would naturally decline. The other was to advance against the trend like the Cold River City and forcibly dig out a piece of meat from the mouths of the top big sections. Of course, this step could be said to be extremely difficult. Chu Xiu raised his head and looked at the blood-red mountain in front of him. His eyes flickered with ferocious killing intent. The blood-red mountain in front of him was the location of the Blood River Church. In fact, the mountain used to be an ordinary mountain. It was only because the world energy in this area was relatively dense that the Blood River Church turned it into a mountain. But perhaps Ancestor Blood River wanted to show off his strength, so he had people dye the mountain red. Moreover, he told others that when the Blood River Church fought for the mountain, the blood that flowed after the fierce battle had dyed the mountain red. In reality, when the Blood River Church occupied this place, there wasn't even a single person in this broken place. Who would fight with them? After a while, Chu Xiu waved his hand and said faintly, "Kill." In front of the mountain gate of the Blood River Church, 2 real Pellet State disciples were guarding the mountain gate in boredom. In fact, it was enough to send a few young disciples to guard the mountain gate, but Ancestor Blood River wanted to save face, so he insisted that these real Pellet State deputies take turns to guard the mountain gate. This had already made them a little resentful. At this time, the 2 suddenly saw hundreds of people coming with murderous intent. Their complexion suddenly changed, and they immediately shouted, "Who are you?" Chu Xiu stopped and glanced at the 2. Just when the 2 of them were waiting for Chu Xiu to report his name, they were shocked to find that the blood in their whole body seemed to be out of control, and it was boiling crazily in their bodies. Before they could react, a "poochie" sound rang out, and the blood in their bodies was instantly sucked out, splattering all over the ground. Their corpses were twisted and shriveled like zombies. Chapter 1205. Chu Xiu was here to kill. There was no need to talk too much when it came to killing. Lu Fengxian and Mei Qinglian looked at each other, feeling slightly surprised. They were people who knew Chu Xiu better. Naturally, they knew that there was something wrong with Chu Xiu's current state. His murderous aura was too strong. Although Lu Jianghe was seriously injured, it was not that they looked down on Lu Jianghe. Lu Jianghe's position in Chu Xiu's heart was not that important. At least, it was not important enough to affect Chu Xiu's emotions. It seemed that Chu Xiu had been under too much pressure recently. It was so heavy that he needed a place to vent it. Looking up at the peak of the mountain, Chu Xiu said lightly, "Go up and destroy the sect." In an instant, a powerful murderous aura shot up into the sky. The entire Blood River sect was suddenly covered in dark clouds, shrouded in a powerful murderous aura. The martial artists of the Blood River sect were not blind or deaf when Chu Xiu caused such a commotion. Of course, they could feel it. Before Chu Xiu and the others reached the halfway point of the mountain, the entire Blood River sect's formation had been activated. Sect leader Shang, it's up to you now. Shang Tinliang nodded, and the withering field bloomed around him. When he walked in front of the formation, the mountain guarding formation of the Blood River sect began to operate crazily and overload. It glowed red, and its power was displayed to the extreme. The power of withering was unique to Shang Tianliang. It was related to time and the transformation of yin and yang. The 4 seasons withered and flourished. Everything could only function normally within a certain pattern. Now, although Shang Tianliang had made the mountain-protecting formation of Blood River cult erupt with its greatest power, in less than 10 breaths, the entire formation had already produced a series of cracking sounds. Clearly, it could no longer withstand the great burden and directly shattered. "How dare you!" Groups of martial artists rushed down from the peak of the mountain. The leader was a middle-aged man in the heaven and earth mystic realm. This person was called Duan Ling Kong, and he was the vice-sect leader of the Blood River sect. In fact, he was not a disciple of Patriarch Blood River. Instead, he had joined the Blood River cult halfway, but he had learned Patriarch Blood River's cultivation method. However, because he was already a famous figure in the Jianghu, an expert at the peak of heaven and earth elemental enlightenment, he had a status, so he didn't have a master. In addition, with the temptation of the position of vice-sect leader, he brought some of his disciples and joined Patriarch Blood River in exchange for the position of vice-sect leader. "Who are you? How dare you barge into my Blood River cult and kill my people? Are you looking to die?" When Chu Xiu was making a name for himself in the eastern region, Duan Lingkong spent most of his time in closed-door cultivation, so even though he'd heard of Chu Xiu's name, he didn't know Chu Xiu. However, what Chu Xiu replied to him was an extremely sharp and powerful saber light that seemed capable of tearing the entire mountain apart. The saber intent was so powerful that it seemed capable of tearing heaven and earth apart, and it was so sharp that it could cut through any force. The blood glow around Duan Lingkong's body surged, and a 300-foot-long blood river appeared, blocking in front of Chu Xiu. Although the Blood River cult's cultivation method was not as powerful as the Blood Demon Divine technique, for a powerhouse like Duan Lingkong who had cultivated to the Heaven and Earth Mystic Illumination stage, he had already absorbed a lot of qi and blood into his body. At this moment, the power of the Blood River was extraordinary. However, in the next moment, Chu Xiu's sharp saber that combined the saber intent of the shattering formula and the ethereal slash completely tore Duan Lingkong's Blood River apart. As if it had not encountered any obstruction at all, the saber aura slashed directly at him. In shock, the boundless qi and blood in Duan Lingkong's hand condensed into a blood-refined saber. The qi and blood on it was so dense that it was black, and it even faintly revealed a trace of powerful devil qi. This blood-refined saber collided with Chu Xiu's saber. With a loud bang, blood splattered in all directions. Duan Lingkong could not withstand the powerful force and was blasted away. He could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. A hint of horror appeared in his eyes. What kind of monster is this? The foundation of his strength is simply terrifying. However, in the next moment, he made a seal with his hand despite his injuries. The blood that had shattered into a pile of blood mist under Chu Xiu's saber suddenly condensed into threads and condensed under Chu Xiu's feet. It enveloped his entire body like a huge blood cocoon. At the same time, Duan Lingkong sneered and began to exert force, wanting to suck all the blood in Chu Xiu's body dry. However, his smile froze on his face because he sensed that there was no movement of qi and blood in the blood cocoon at all. The blood cocoon dispersed, but there was no one in it. Illusion! Duan Lingkong was horrified. In the next moment, 8 figures of Chu Xiu actually appeared around him. At the same time, they held devil qi longbows in their hands, and 8 triple annihilation arrows that were burning with pitch-black annihilation fire burst out explosively. The bloody light in Duan Lingkong's eyes skyrocketed, and the energy of his primordial spirit was raised to the limit. However, he could not see which one was real and which one was fake. He had never seen such an evil and terrifying illusion in his life. Suddenly, Duan Lingkong clenched his teeth and opened up a blood-red territory. He wanted to use the territory to forcefully resist the triple annihilation arrows and test the authenticity of the arrows. However, when all 8 arrows entered his territory, Duan Lingkong's expression changed abruptly. It's real. All 8 arrows are real. 8 extremely powerful arrows that were burning with annihilation fire are all real. Duan Lingkong did not dare to believe it. How could his opponent's strength be so powerful? At this critical moment, he could only set up the blood river around him and retract his territory to forcefully defend himself. The 8 arrows had already locked on all the places around him that he could dodge to. It was impossible for him to escape. With a loud bang, Duan Lingkong spat out a mouthful of blood again. The pitch-black annihilation fire wrapped around him and evaporated his 300 feet long blood river. However, before he could think of a way to eliminate the troublesome annihilation fire, Chu Xiu slashed the ground with his saber. In an instant, the ground trembled, and a huge wave of saber light rose from the ground, directly enveloping Duan Lingkong. 7 limits, annihilation. The blood river was extinguished, and fresh blood splattered everywhere. At this moment, Duan Lingkong's body was covered in blood, and his eyes were filled with horror. He was beaten up in all aspects. In front of this person, he did not even have the slightest chance to fight back. He was directly hung up and beaten up to this state. At this moment, Duan Lingkong no longer had the slightest intention to fight. The blood qi around his body exploded, and he wanted to escape to the mountain. However, at this moment, a whisper that sounded like a ghost whispering entered his ears. The sky was crying and the blood rain was falling, but he could not absorb any energy from the blood rain. He could only feel an endless chill enveloping him. The void was torn apart, and a gigantic devil's hand fell directly on him, grabbing him in its hand. Scram! Duan Lingkong roared, and the blood qi around his body burned intensely. Only then did he finally break free from the gigantic hand that was formed by the mantra of great compassion. However, in the next moment, a figure had already appeared in front of him. A saber slashed down, and the saber's intent was sharp, tearing everything apart. The blood qi around his body was slashed apart. At this critical moment, he directly grabbed the saber with both his hands, and his blood qi burned madly. However, both of his arms were still torn apart, and his body was slashed to the ground, creating a huge pit. Duan Lingkong struggled to climb out of the pit, but in the next moment, Chu Xiu's hand was already on his neck, and his entire body was lifted up. Duan Lingkong was shocked to find that the blood qi that he could control at will in the past did not listen to his orders at all. Instead, under Chu Xiu's control, it was constantly boiling and concentrated in his head. Duan Lingkong's face was flushed, and he shouted in horror, "Spare me!" Before he could finish speaking, his head had already been squeezed by the expanding blood qi like an exploding watermelon. The scene was very bloody, and it caused the warriors from the Blood River cult to completely break down. In reality, they had already broken down before this. The people under Chu Xiu had already rushed over when Chu Xiu and Duan Lingkong were fighting. They were all veterans who had followed Chu Xiu to fight all over the place, so they naturally did not need to command anything. Shang Tianliang's domain was unleashed, and it was basically a massacre. Everyone's power was not under their control, and it began to burn crazily until it exploded. Mei Qinglian's Red Lotus Hellfire was unleashed. Most of the warriors could not even get close to her, and they were directly burned to death by the hellfire of the Heart Demon. As for Lu Fengxian, when she smashed her halberd, there was almost no one who could withstand a single blow. By the time Chu Xiu killed Duan Lingkong, they had more or less cleared out everyone else. Shang Tianyang looked thoughtfully at Chu Xiu. He could feel that Chu Xiu's power had become stronger again. He had only been in seclusion for a few months. To a mysterious heaven and earth realm expert, who often used years as the unit of measurement for seclusion, this was nothing. Therefore, what Chu Xiu had become stronger was not the foundation of his power, but the control he had over it. The description of the martial immortal realm that Tianhun had told Chu Xiu was very useful. At least, it allowed Chu Xiu to know where his path was and where he should put his efforts. Previously, Chu Xiu could not use 8 arrows at the same time with the Triple City Annihilation Arrow. Now, this was not his limit. Stepping on the mountain that was covered in blood, Chu Xiu continued towards the peak. During this time, not a single disciple of the Blood River Church dared to come down. When Chu Xiu arrived at the peak and saw the hall of the Blood River Church, there was a loud noise. The hall of the Blood River Church collapsed. Ancestor Blood River's blood-red robe fluttered in the wind, and a fierce aura emanated from his body. He walked in front of everyone and shouted, "Chu Xiu, you are courting death." Actually, from the moment Chu Xiu stepped into the mountain and killed the 2 disciples guarding the mountain, Ancestor Blood River had already sensed Chu Xiu's arrival. However, he could not do anything. This was because he was in seclusion. When he was chasing after Lu Jianghu, although Ancestor Blood River did not obtain the Blood Demon Divine Technique, he also sensed the wonders of the Blood Demon Divine Technique. For someone at Ancestor Blood River's level to cultivate to this level without the inheritance of a major sect, his talent was definitely not weak. Therefore, he had already gained some benefits from the things he comprehended during the fight. Therefore, after he returned, he immediately began to cultivate in seclusion and integrated it into his martial Tao. Earlier when Chu Xiu ascended the mountain, he was at a critical moment, and even if he wanted to make a move, he couldn't leave and could only watch helplessly as Chu Xiu killed Duan Lingkong. At this moment, he wished for nothing more than to swallow Chu Xiu alive. Chapter 1206. Staring hatefully at Chu Xiu in front of him, Blood River Ancestor had actually miscalculated this time. He really did not expect Chu Xiu to make a move. It should be said that from the beginning he did not regard Chu Xiu as an opponent, but rather had scruples about the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Previously, Blood River Ancestor thought that since he had touched Chu Xiu's men, although Chu Xiu would be angry, he would definitely report it to the Imperial Sky Pavilion and put pressure on Blood River Religion. In fact, Blood River Religion was not afraid at all. In the previous martial arts gambling fight of High Heaven Sect, Blood River Religion had actually publicly stood on the side of Cold River City, so they naturally did not care about the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Anyway, they had Cold River City as their backing. Therefore, after Blood River Ancestor finished hunting down Lujiang River, he had no fear and went into seclusion there. However, he did not expect that Chu Xiu would travel thousands of miles to attack him openly. Was this guy crazy? Patriarch Blood River glared angrily at Chu Xiu as if he wanted to skin him alive. I've seen people who have a death wish, but this is the first time I've seen someone like you who has come to seek death. This time, even if your master is a Tao master or a Buddhist ancestor, I will still suck your blood dry, not to mention that your master is the descendant of Guzun. Apart from him, Blood River Religion only had a total of 3 heaven and earth profound beings. Yin Shuili had been crippled by Lujiang River, and Duan Lingkong had been killed by Chu Xiu, so there was only 1 deputy religion master left. Sects like Blood River Religion did not have a deep foundation, and now they had lost 2 heaven and earth profound beings. This could be said to be a serious blow to them. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Seeking death? Many people have said this to me, but unfortunately, in the end, the person who died was him. My Chu Xiu's people are not so easy to deal with. Attacking my people in the territory of Jianghu County, Blood River Ancestor, you are also seeking death. I heard that this mountain of yours was dyed red by you? You don't live up to your name. I wonder if you can dye it red with the blood of everyone in your Blood River religion? As soon as Chu Xiu's voice fell, before Blood River Ancestor could react, Chu Xiu had already shouted, "Kill! The entire Blood River religion will be exterminated, not even a chicken or a dog will be spared." The warriors of the sacred sect behind him immediately rushed out with murderous intent. The intensity of the murderous intent was even greater than when they destroyed the Subodhi monastery. Since Chu Xiu said he would not leave, not even a chicken or a dog, Blood River Ancestor would not be spared. Patriarch Blood River bellowed furiously, and the Blood River around him surged out. The Blood River that was several hundred feet long surged behind him, and it was even more powerful and dazzling than the Blood River condensed by Duan Lingkong. Although Chu Xiu's killing intent was boundless, his eyes were extremely calm as he observed Patriarch Blood River's true strength. He was a half-step martial immortal, but this so-called half-step only referred to the realm. Although it could affect one's combat power, it was not absolute. Regardless of whether it was the momentum or the power that Blood River Ancestor displayed, he was not as good as Xen Jialuo. After all, one of them was a cultivator from an unorthodox background, while the other was a palace master of a top sect in the eastern region, Brahmin religion. He was also the future temple master of one of the 3 temples of Brahmin religion. The Endless of Blood River directly shrouded Chu Xiu. In the of Blood River, there were countless ghosts and spirits howling, weakening the power of Chu Xiu's primordial spirit. Its power was far stronger than Duan Lingkong's. The primordial spirit behind Chu Xiu bloomed with golden light. This level of primordial spirit attack could no longer hurt him. Especially after cultivating Moriha's illusion, Chu Xiu's mental strength was also a notch higher. Without dodging or evading, Chu Xiu slashed down with his saber. The razor-sharp saber radiance seemed to be tearing the heavens and the earth apart, tearing the Blood River apart. However, at the next moment, the river of blood that had been torn apart changed its shape again. It extended backwards and blocked Chu Xiu's saber attack. After being torn apart easily, it could still change its shape again. In the end, when Chu Xiu's saber light was several tens of feet away from Patriarch Blood River, its power was completely exhausted. Blood River Ancestor sneered and said, "Do you think I'm so easy to deal with? Do you know how many experts of the eastern region's blood has been condensed in this of Blood River? Don't worry. You'll become one of them later." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. He had really underestimated Blood River Ancestor. The cultivation technique that Blood River Ancestor had researched based on the incomplete Blood River Sect manual was definitely not as perfect as the Blood Demon Divine technique that had been polished and improved by Dugu Weiwei. However, for him to refine his opponent's blood and fuse his power into the river of blood, turning it into an existence that was neither a cultivation technique nor a weapon, yet was able to fuse the characteristics of these 2 attributes, this was truly very rare. Seeing that the of Blood River was crashing towards him again, Chu Xiu formed a seal with his hands, and the 2-sided Buddha Dharma idol appeared behind him. Mavrokana was burning with intense Buddha light, and the 3rd eye of Mahakala spewed out endless apocalyptic fire. At this moment, Blood River Ancestor's disciple, In Shueli, saw this scene from the chaotic battle and hurriedly shouted, "Master, be careful. This Chu Xiu is also good at Buddhist cultivation techniques." "Bastard! Why didn't you say so earlier?" Blood River Ancestor's expression changed. He wanted to put away his of Blood River, but it was too late. The scorching true sun fire and the evil apocalyptic fire took turns roasting the of Blood River, instantly causing 1/10 of it to evaporate. Chu Xiu's strongest point was not his foundation of power, nor was it his realm, but his understanding of the martial Tao, which was the battle Tao that he had accumulated through life and death battles. His strength had been cultivated through life and death battles, so he was very sensitive to the various martial Tao's battle Tao. Therefore, after exchanging a few blows, he could already tell that Blood River Ancestor's cultivation technique seemed frightening, but it had too many flaws. It was a standard, evil, and strange demonic Tao cultivation technique that was lacking in grandeur. It was very easily restrained by Buddhist cultivation techniques. The remaining of the Blood River was integrated into Blood River Ancestor's body. The next moment, the blood chi around him surged into the sky, and a sharp blade appeared on each of his fingers. The blood chi behind him condensed into tentacles that wrapped around Chu Xiu. The formation breaker slashed out continuously, tearing apart the tentacles condensed from the blood chi. However, Blood River Ancestor had already gotten close to Chu Xiu. The powerful sharp blade condensed from the power of chi and blood slashed wildly at Chu Xiu, causing the air to be filled with blood-colored claw marks. However, in front of Chu Xiu's broken formation, even supreme-grade divine weapons were not as sharp and powerful as the broken formation, which was a divine weapon born from the world. Therefore, Patriarch Blood River was still unable to injure Chu Xiu. However, at that moment, Blood River Ancestor's domain spread out, and the boundless blood-colored domain directly enveloped Chu Xiu's entire body. It crazily pulled out the chi and blood in his body, as if it wanted to forcibly pull them out of his body. Chu Xiu's body moved, and his own domain also spread out. The misty domain collided with the blood-red domain, and in an instant, a power fluctuation that could affect the laws of the world erupted, causing the entire Blood River sect to be covered in dark clouds and howling winds. Clashing with domains was actually a very irrational thing to do, but at that moment, Blood River Ancestor sneered and said, "Brat, just wait to be dried up." Although clashing with domains would consume a lot of energy for both sides, Blood River Ancestor was a half-step martial immortal, after all. He would not be at a disadvantage in a clash of domains. However, at the next moment, a change suddenly occurred in Chu Xiu's divine domain that was strangling the chi and blood. The reversed yin and yang powers of the 5 elements began to reorganize and change. Within the domain, Buddhist light instantly shone around Chu Xiu. He closed his eyes slightly and formed a Buddhist seal with his hands, as if a benevolent Buddha had descended. At the same time, the entire domain instantly ignited with endless scorching Buddhist flames, evaporating the chi and blood in his opponent's domain. Double domain. Blood River Ancestor's expression suddenly changed. Most cultivators, or rather 99% of them, only had one domain. There were also a small number of cultivators who could condense 2 or 3 domains. Although having more domains did not necessarily mean that one was strong, having more domains meant that the other party's martial path had more changes. Chu Xiu said lightly, "Double domain? As long as I want it, I can have 10,000 domains." Chu Xiu did not have 2 domains. He only had one domain, and within his domain he was a godlike existence. The 5 elements, yin and yang, and the laws of the world would be reversed in Chu Xiu's domain, and it could strangle all kinds of power. Similarly, as long as Chu Xiu wanted it, he could also rearrange the yin and yang powers of the 5 elements at will, transforming them into any power he wanted. Of course, he had already mastered this power, just like the scorching Buddhist flames in his domain. No matter what kind of power changed, in the end, it would condense into Chu Xiu's domain. The scorching Buddhist flames restrained Blood River Ancestor's domain. However, Blood River Ancestor was, after all, a half-step martial immortal. His realm and power were still stronger than Chu Xiu's. Therefore, he did not retreat. Instead, he mobilized more power and used the power of his domain to suppress Chu Xiu. Although most experts in the mysterious enlightenment realm would not use their domains in a battle of domains, he was clearly a half-step martial immortal. His realm was far higher than Chu Xiu's. Why couldn't he use this power to suppress Chu Xiu? However, at this time, a strange look appeared in Chu Xiu's eyes. He said, "Blood River Ancestor, look below. If this continues, your Blood River Church will be killed by me." Blood River Ancestor could not help but look around. The result made him feel unsteady and he almost vomited blood. Here, he was evenly matched with Chu Xiu. Although it was difficult, he was not defeated. At this time, the Blood River Church was completely defeated. Shang Tianliang had already attacked another deputy head of the Blood River Church until he vomited blood. As for the others, it was simply a massacre. Mei Qinglian, Lu Fengxian, Chu Wuji and the others could be said to have attacked with all their strength. Even Lu Fengxian, who had the best character, did not hold back at all. Although Lu Jianghe had a foul mouth, after experiencing so many disasters and burdens together, they had long regarded Lu Jianghe as one of their own. Now, seeing that Lu Jianghe was seriously injured by Blood River ancestor, Chu Xiu was angry, and so were they. The power of the attack with hatred could be said to be extremely powerful. Chapter 1207. The Blood River sect was the foundation of Patriarch Blood River's life. In fact, Patriarch Blood River was very ambitious. With Patriarch Blood River's strength, as long as he was prepared to join a top sect, he would definitely be able to exchange for the position of the head guest. However, Patriarch Blood River was unwilling to submit to someone else. He would rather guard his Blood River sect alone and slowly develop it than submit to someone else. In the end, the Blood River sect that he had spent hundreds of years building had been destroyed in Chu Xiu's hands. This made Patriarch Blood River extremely furious, and he could no longer care about wasting time with Chu Xiu. The domain suddenly expanded, and a powerful force erupted. Blood-colored light shot into the sky. The boundless blood-colored light enveloped Chu Xiu, constantly compressing his domain. There was even a hint of power in the blood-colored light that eroded the power of Chu Xiu's essence, soul, and blood qi. Patriarch Blood River gritted his teeth and pushed the power of the blood-colored light to the limit. Specks of blood mist even appeared around him and fused with the blood-colored light. Warriors who cultivated the qi and blood qi cultivation method paid the most attention to their own qi and blood. Their qi and blood were equivalent to their strength. Now that Patriarch Blood River had fused his own strength into it, it was clear that he was giving it his all. He was prepared to quickly defeat Chu Xiu and rescue the other warriors of the Blood River sect. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes, and a mysterious look flashed through them. Patriarch Blood River's heart was in a mess. When the blood-colored light compressed Chu Xiu's domain to less than 10 feet around him, Patriarch Blood River suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood-colored light shone even brighter, instantly compressing the domain to less than 3 feet away from Chu Xiu. In the next moment, Chu Xiu suddenly gave up on the domain. The violent demonic aura around him swept out, devouring the power around him in a frenzy, including the powerful blood-red light created by Patriarch Blood River. Chu Xiu's body began to grow crazily. In the end, he grew to a height of thousands of zhang, completely shattering Patriarch Blood River's blood light. With a punch, Chu Xiu directly smashed Patriarch Blood River into the cliff. The power of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth dissipated rapidly. Chu Xiu had only used the power of a single punch this time. Therefore, he wasn't completely drained and could still hold on. However, the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth did not kill Patriarch Blood River. Patriarch Blood River coughed up blood as he struggled to climb out of the cliff. He was covered in blood and looked extremely wretched. Divine ability? How could it be a divine ability? Patriarch Blood River was in disbelief. At Patriarch Blood River's realm, he naturally knew about the existence of divine abilities. Moreover, he himself was very eager to obtain a divine ability. Of course, the probability of obtaining one was very small. Patriarch Blood River was born in the wilderness. He did not join those top sects, nor did he have many fortuitous encounters. Therefore, things like divine abilities could only be encountered by Patriarch Blood River. But now, he had seen a divine ability from Chu Xiu, a junior martial artist whose realm was far below his. This made him feel indignant and unfair. Seeing that a large number of warriors from Blood River sect had been slaughtered, Patriarch Blood River gritted his teeth and shouted, "Chu Xiu! Why are you attacking my Blood River sect? Is the Imperial Sky Pavilion going to completely fall out with Cold River City? If you stop now, I promise you that my Blood River sect will remain neutral and will never stand on Cold River City's side." In the beginning, Patriarch Blood River attacked with hidden anger. He did not ask Chu Xiu this question at all. It should be said that from the beginning, he did not believe that Chu Xiu would come to kill him with all his strength just because he was chasing after one of his subordinates. Thinking of the general situation of the entire East region, the relationship between Chu Xiu and the Imperial Sky Pavilion, and the relationship between the Imperial Sky Pavilion and Cold River City. Chu Xiu's arrival today was most likely to help the Imperial Sky Pavilion get rid of him in advance. Chu Xiu shook his head indifferently and said, "Patriarch Blood River, it's actually a little sad for people to live like you. Even if you die, you won't know how you died. From the moment I came up the mountain, I said that Chu Xiu's people are not so easy to deal with." Patriarch Blood River's eyes widened as if he could not believe that Chu Xiu was really going to attack him for such a slightly ridiculous reason. Seeing that the people of the Blood River sect were about to be killed by Chu Xiu, Patriarch Blood River roared angrily. The qi and blood around him dispersed in an instant. His whole body merged into the void and turned into an extremely terrifying existence. Without a physical body, his whole body seemed to be melted blood, with a dirty color. "Junior, today I will not rest until you die." Chu Xiu looked at Patriarch Blood River in surprise. As expected, there was no one in this realm who was easy to deal with. This Patriarch Blood River had actually refined all the qi and blood in his body and then merged it into his own body. Such an existence could not even be considered a human. Blood demon? In an instant, the endless river of tainted blood enveloped Chu Xiu. The power corroded and polluted everything. Everywhere it passed, even the energy of the world began to be corroded at a frenzied rate, giving off a charred smell. Patriarch Blood River's eyes were filled with joy. Chu Xiu had destroyed the Blood River sect that he had spent his entire life working on. He wanted Chu Xiu to stay here and be buried with the Blood River sect. However, at this time, Patriarch Blood River found that there was not the slightest trace of fear in Chu Xiu's eyes. Instead, there was a playful expression on his face. Before Patriarch Blood River could react, Chu Xiu had already formed a seal with his hands. Within the seal, a brilliant Buddhist light bloomed. It was magnificent, dazzling, and extremely holy. A cross-shaped lotus bloomed in the middle of Chu Xiu's hand seal. The lotus was large and clean, untainted by mud. The great redemption of the cross cleansed the world. The resplendent cross-shaped lotus bloomed, and wherever it passed, the Buddhist light shone for eternity, purifying all evil and filth. Under the illumination of the Buddhist light, the tainted blood that Blood River Patriarch had refined emitted white smoke and evaporated at a crazy rate. "No!" Patriarch Blood River roared angrily, but his eyes were filled with endless fear. He could not resist that power because it was a divine power, another divine power. Patriarch Blood River used all his strength to break free from the shackles of this power, but the next moment, the cross-shaped lotus bloomed, and endless light enveloped the entire Blood River sect. Patriarch Blood River's shrill cries gradually became softer in the endless light, and finally dissipated. Chu Xiu grabbed the air, and a stream of fresh blood appeared in his hand. The fresh blood was extremely pure, like a crystal, and like a living thing, it kept churning in Chu Xiu's hand. Chu Xiu glanced at it, then threw it into his secret space box. This was Patriarch Blood River's soul blood, where his true spirit was stored. Patriarch Blood River could refine all the blood in his body into a filthy state, but only the soul blood in his true soul had to be kept extremely pure. This thing had a certain benefit after refining, but Chu Xiu did not plan to use it himself. Since he had promised to bring Patriarch Blood River's blood back to Jianghu, he would definitely do it. Although all the blood in Patriarch Blood River's body had been purified, this small ball of extremely pure soul blood was more useful than the dirty blood in his body. Mei Qinglian walked over and looked at Chu Xiu in surprise. "Are you okay?" Chu Xiu asked curiously, "What's wrong with me?" "Every time you use a divine power, you look like you've been sucked dry. Why you fine this time?" Mei Qinglian looked at Chu Xiu strangely, and Chu Xiu looked uncomfortable. "Who's been sucked dry? I'm just overexerting myself." Chu Xiu thought about it and said, "The cross-shaped lotus seal is different from my other divine powers. It can't be said to be weak, but it can't be said to be strong either. This divine power is an inherent divine power of the Buddhist sect. When facing all kinds of evil and strange powers, the cross-shaped lotus seal's power can be maximized. However, when facing other powers that lean towards the yang attribute, the power of the cross-shaped lotus seal is very ordinary. Chu Xiu was very satisfied with the cross-shaped lotus seal that he had comprehended under the Subhuti treasure tree. Although the effects were limited, the consumption was much less than the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. It was completely within the range that Chu Xiu could bear. After destroying the Blood River sect, Chu Xiu counted the losses. In fact, he had not lost many people. It had to be said that the Blood River sect's warriors were still weak. When the Blood River Patriarch was imparting martial arts to these disciples, he seemed to have held back. Most of the Blood River sect's warriors only knew how to absorb blood to cultivate evil techniques, but they did not inherit the Blood River Patriarch's strange martial arts. Right now, the entire Blood River sect was covered in rivers of blood. It had become the Blood River sect in name only. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "Let's go to the Imperial Sky Pavilion." Mei Qinglian asked in surprise, "Why are we going to the Imperial Sky Pavilion?" Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "Do you really think that we can sit back and relax after destroying the Blood River sect? Cold River City will not let this go. No matter what, we have to get the Imperial Sky Pavilion to help us share the risk." When Chu Xiu said this, Mei Qinglian understood. Share the risk? He was obviously looking for someone to take the blame. When she heard this, Mei Qinglian could not help but mourn for the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Being Chu Xiu's superior was a high-risk job. Li Wuxiang had already been cursed to death by Chu Xiu. Who knew how long autumn water could last? Although Li Wuxiang's death was not related to Chu Xiu, the halo that Chu Xiu had of cursing his superior was still very strong. Before Chu Xiu had returned to the Imperial Sky Pavilion, the news of the Blood River sect being destroyed had spread throughout the eastern region. It instantly caused a huge uproar. The Blood River sect was not considered weak in the eastern region. The Blood River Patriarch was even thought to be the most promising existence among the rogue cultivators to step into the martial immortal realm. But now, this hope was killed by someone. That person's name was Chu Xiu. In his hands, the Blood River sect was truly covered in rivers of blood. It became the Blood River sect in name only. Chapter 1208. The destruction of the Blood River cult caused a great shock to the Jianghu of the East region. In fact, Chu Xiu had always been very famous in the Jianghu of the East region. As the successor of Gu Zun and having defeated Shenyuan Wushuang and Yuan Fu in succession, Chu Xiu had long entered the eyes of the experts in the East region. However, that was only his personal fame. Now, Chu Xiu had destroyed the Blood River cult with his subordinates. The destruction of the Blood River cult, which was second only to the top sects in the East region, was a great shock to the entire Jianghu of the East region. When Chu Xiu arrived at the Imperial Sky Pavilion, Lu Sanjin personally came out to greet Chu Xiu. However, after seeing Chu Xiu, Lu Sanjin's expression was a little strange. "Brother Chu, did you really destroy the Blood River cult?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "This matter has been spread all over the East region. How can it be fake?" Lu Sanjin opened his mouth, but he didn't know what to say. In fact, Ancestor Blood River was not liked in the East region. Ancestor Blood River was evil and strange, and the cultivation method of the Blood River cult needed to absorb the blood of warriors to cultivate, so it was destined that the people of the Blood River cult would not do things with good intentions. However, Ancestor Blood River was very smart. He usually did not attack the big sects and only attacked some rogue cultivators. Although Ancestor Blood River had once aroused public anger and even attracted many rogue cultivators to attack the Blood River cult, in the end, they either returned without success or became nourishment for Ancestor Blood River. In addition, later, Ancestor Blood River turned to Cold River City and had a strong backer, so no one dared to cause trouble for Ancestor Blood River. As a result, now that Ancestor Blood River had died in the hands of Chu Xiu and the entire Blood River cult was destroyed because Ancestor Blood River had attacked Chu Xiu's subordinate. No matter how one thought about it, it felt a little strange. "The Pavilion Master is waiting for you inside." Now the Pavilion Master is a little emotional, so be careful. Chu Xiu nodded and walked straight into the inner hall. At this time, in the inner hall, Zhong Qiushui did not look angry. She just looked at Chu Xiu helplessly. Yes, helplessness. At this moment, he somewhat understood Li Wuxiang's difficulties. If he wasn't the pavilion master and Chu Xiu killed Patriarch Blood River, he would definitely clap his hands and cheer. Killing Patriarch Blood River, who was a lackey of Cold River City, would boost the reputation of the Imperial Heaven Pavilion. No matter how one looked at it, it should be a good thing. However, now that he was the pavilion master, he also experienced how difficult it was to control a major sect like the Imperial Sky Pavilion in the eastern region. He had just had a head-on fight with Cold River City. Although Cold River City didn't attack him because of his crazy and fearless look, but Cold River City was still eyeing him covetously. In the end, Chu Xiu destroyed the Blood River sect, which was equivalent to cutting off one of Cold River City's arms. Under such circumstances, with Yi Weikong's character, he would definitely not swallow his anger. However, Zhong Qiushui was not Li Wuxiang after all. His character was radical and strong, so he didn't blame Chu Xiu. He just sighed and said, "Tell me, what are you thinking? You killed Patriarch Blood River and destroyed the Blood River sect. I believe with your character, you must be prepared." Chu Xiu nodded and said, "I'm not really prepared. I just have some ideas to tell you, Pavilion Master." "What ideas?" Chu Xiu's eyes were dark, and he said in a deep voice, "Is the Imperial Heaven Pavilion ready to fight to the death with Cold River City?" Zhong Qiushui's expression suddenly changed, but then he sighed and shook his head. He said, "Ready? Even if we fight to the death, we can't win. What else do we need to prepare?" Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "Are you ready to wait for death if you can't win? This time, Cold River City will definitely go all out." Zhong Qiushui said angrily, "You destroyed the Blood River sect and cut off one of Cold River City's arms. It would be strange if Cold River City didn't make a move." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Pavilion Master, you're wrong. I killed Patriarch Blood River. Although it will prompt Cold River City to make a move in advance, even if I don't touch Blood River sect, they will make a move soon. I believe Pavilion Master knows Yi Weikong's character better than I do. His ambition can't be satisfied by the current size of Cold River City. Although Yi Weikong is not too old, he is not too young either. As his successor, Qi Wuhin is far inferior to Yi Weikong. Therefore, if I were Yi Weikong, I would destroy the Imperial Heaven Pavilion with all my strength before my strength starts to decline and divide the East Territory with High Heaven sect. This time, Cold River City will not hold back. I wonder if the Imperial Heaven Pavilion can withstand it." Zhong Qiushui was silent. He definitely had more dealings with Cold River City than Chu Xiu did. What Chu Xiu could see, he could also see. It was just that he was unwilling to face this kind of thing. "Tell me, what do you have in mind?" Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "There is only one way, and that is to cut off our flesh to feed the tiger, and then drive the tiger to devour the wolf." Zhong Qiushui frowned immediately. Who is the tiger and who is the wolf? High Heaven sect is the tiger, and Cold River City is the wolf. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "As long as Pavilion Master is willing to cut off your flesh and give up a part of the Imperial Heaven Pavilion's interests to High Heaven sect, I believe High Heaven sect will be willing to make a move." High Heaven sect is the #1 sect in the East Territory. They definitely don't want to see a hungry wolf rise and challenge their position. Zhong Qiushui frowned deeply and said in a deep voice, "But doing so is equivalent to drinking poison to quench thirst, fattening High Heaven sect. When they devour our Imperial Heaven Pavilion, won't the result be the same? Don't forget, our Imperial Heaven Pavilion has a great enmity with High Heaven sect for more than 10,000 years." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "People who are dying of thirst, what else can't they drink? Even if it's drinking poison to quench thirst, at least drink it now, and Imperial Heaven Pavilion will have time to develop. If we don't drink it, we won't even have that little bit of time. So, as long as Pavilion Master is willing to cut off your flesh, I will talk to High Heaven sect." "How much do I need?" Zhong Qiushui thought for a long time, and then asked hesitantly. Chu Xiu stretched out a finger and said, "A county." Zhong Qiushui was taken aback. But before he could speak, Chu Xiu said, "Pavilion Master, you know the strength of High Heaven Sect. If we don't pay such a big price, High Heaven Sect will think that we are sowing discord between them and Cold River City, and they won't act easily." Zhong Qiushui was much more decisive than Li Wuxiang. Perhaps Imperial Heaven Pavilion was really forced to the point where they had no other choice. Apart from Chu Xiu's method, Zhong Qiushui really couldn't think of any other way. Cutting off his flesh was better than fighting to the death with Cold River City. Moreover, it was indeed better for Chu Xiu to talk about this matter than him. High Heaven Sect and Imperial Heaven Pavilion had been fighting since the lower realm 10,000 years ago, all the way to the Daluotian continent. Now, Zhong Qiushui really couldn't bring himself to lower his head to High Heaven Sect and cut off his flesh to ask them to help him. Although Chu Xiu was nominally a member of Imperial Heaven Pavilion, he was Gu Zun's successor after all. He could stand in the perspective of an outsider and talk about this kind of thing, so it wasn't so embarrassing. After receiving Zhong Qiushui's promise, Chu Xiu went straight to High Heaven Sect. In a reception hall of High Heaven Sect, Sect Master Fang Yinglong, Qin Baiyuan, and the three martial immortal realm powerhouses of Linghu Immortal Mountain were all present. Originally, with Chu Xiu's face, he was not worthy of the three martial immortals coming out to greet him together. However, due to the fact that Chu Xiu had just annihilated the Blood River Church and his influence in the eastern region's pugilistic world, and that he had said that he wanted to discuss important matters regarding the entire eastern region with them, the three martial immortals had come together. Seeing Chu Xiu at this time, Qin Baiyuan was still a little unhappy with him. Snorting lightly, Qin Baiyuan said, "Boy, what important things do you want to tell us? Don't think that you are the #1 figure in the Eastern Territory martial world just because you destroyed Blood River Cult. With the scale of Blood River Cult, my High Heaven Sect can destroy it with a wave of our hand. If you don't give me a reason today, it won't be so easy to leave my High Heaven Sect." Chu Xiu didn't care about Qin Baiyuan's attitude. His words were earth-shattering and shocked all three of them. "My Imperial Heaven Pavilion is willing to exchange a county's land for High Heaven Sect's help to curb the expansion of Cold River City." Qin Baiyuan said with a look of disbelief, "What did you say? A county's land? Does Zhong Qiushui know what you said?" Chu Xiu took out the token Zhong Qiushui gave him and said, "This is the secret order of the Imperial Heaven Pavilion's Pavilion Master. It is enough to represent the Pavilion Master's intention." Qin Baiyuan and the other two looked at each other with disbelief in their eyes. The Imperial Sky Pavilion had really gone all out this time. That was the land of a county. It represented a county's resources, a county's talents, and a county's influence in the martial arts world. The price was enough to tempt them. However, this was a major event of the entire Eastern Domain. Qin Baiyuan and the others wouldn't agree so easily. Moreover, they wanted more benefits. Qin Baiyuan narrowed his eyes and said, "Drive the tiger to swallow the wolf? You want my High Heaven Sect to save your Imperial Heaven Pavilion from its crisis with just a county's land? Not bad. However, have you forgotten the hatred between our two sects that has lasted for over 10,000 years?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Old Sect Master Qin, there's no need to probe anymore. A county's land is the Imperial Heaven Pavilion's bottom line. If your High Heaven Sect doesn't help, you'll bear the consequences yourself." Qin Baiyuan was so angry that he laughed. "What? If my High Heaven Sect doesn't help you, will you attack my High Heaven Sect instead?" Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "I won't, but Cold River City will. If High Heaven Sect doesn't help, the Imperial Heaven Pavilion can't stop Yi Weikong, a 7th-layer martial immortal. Since they can't stop him, they might as well surrender. Yi Weikong's strength is already at the 6th-layer martial immortal. It won't be difficult for him to reach the 7th layer if he goes all out. If my Imperial Heaven Pavilion chooses to surrender, with the Imperial Heaven Pavilion's secret techniques, we can fully support Yi Weikong and push his strength to the 8th-layer martial immortal. At that time, there will be 2 8th-layer martial immortal experts in the Eastern Domain. I wonder, will your High Heaven Sect be able to sit still?" Hearing this, even Fang Yinglong, who had been incomparably calm, revealed a cold glint in his eyes. "You dare?" Qin Baiyuan shouted. Chu Xiu retorted, I don't dare, but the Imperial Heaven Pavilion dares. You're about to be exterminated. What else do you dare not do? Groveling and surrendering is better than having your inheritance destroyed, isn't it? Chapter 1209. In the face of Chu Xiu's tit-for-tat, High Heaven Sect compromised and chose to agree to Chu Xiu's conditions. Although Qin Baiyuan and the others didn't believe that the Imperial Sky Pavilion, a great sect with tens of thousands of years of history, would choose to surrender to Cold River City, they couldn't afford to gamble. If the Imperial Sky Pavilion was serious, they would be dumbfounded. Qin Baiyuan said in a deep voice, How do you want my High Heaven Sect to help you? Don't even think about helping you destroy Cold River City. I can only guarantee that the Imperial Sky Pavilion won't be destroyed by Cold River City. Chu Xiu nodded and said, That's enough. Actually, I only need High Heaven Sect to help us once and heavily injure Cold River City. Everyone from High Heaven Sect, especially Pavilion Master, you only need to lie in ambush in the southern barbaric land and attack at the critical moment. Qin Baiyuan asked in confusion, Why lie in ambush in the southern barbaric land? If Cold River City wants to attack the Imperial Sky Pavilion, will they give up their headquarters and attack your tiny Jianghu County? Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, Why not? Cold River City didn't fight to the death with the Imperial Sky Pavilion before because they were afraid of the trump cards in the Imperial Sky Pavilion's headquarters. Now, if Cold River City decides to destroy the Imperial Sky Pavilion, they definitely won't fight to the death with the Imperial Sky Pavilion so easily. Instead, they'll cut off all the Imperial Sky Pavilion's wings first. Among all of the Imperial Sky Pavilion's affiliated forces, I'm the most powerful one. Moreover, I've just annihilated the Blood River sect. Yi Weikong must hate me to the core. It's only normal for him to attack me first. Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Qin Baiyuan looked at Chu Xiu with a strange gaze. To be remembered by a martial immortal level expert was not a good thing. However, at the same time, to be hated by a martial immortal level expert to such an extent, Chu Xiu could be said to be quite capable. After reaching an agreement with High Heaven Sect, Chu Xiu did not delay and immediately returned to Imperial Sky Pavilion to inform Zhong Qiushui to prepare to defend against the enemy in the southern barbaric land. Although Zhong Qiushui had some doubts about Yi Weikong attacking Jianghu County first, since Chu Xiu had negotiated with High Heaven Sect, he could only comply. In fact, Chu Xiu was almost 100% sure about this matter. Because Yi Weikong was a shameless person. To the weak, it was a derogatory term, but to the strong, it was terrifying. When such a powerful martial immortal level expert became so shameless, apart from absolute strength, what else could one possibly use to take care of him? Specifically targeting a junior martial art practitioner like Chu Xiu was the kind of thing that was hard to hear. However, it was precisely because Yi Weikong was shameless that he did not care about his so-called reputation. Killing Chu Xiu first would definitely be a great blow to the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Just as Chu Xiu was making arrangements, Cold River City was also mobilizing, and all the elites were gathered in Lingluo County. Chu Xiu's guess was very accurate. Yi Weikong was indeed going to deal with him first. For Cold River City, Blood River Church was just an obedient mad dog that bit people. In the past, if Blood River Ancestor had not been tactful and decisively admitted defeat after provoking Cold River City, there would be no Blood River Church now. No matter how mad a dog was in the face of Yi Weikong, it would only end up as stew. However, even if Blood River Church was just a dog raised by Cold River City, it was still Yi Weikong's dog. Moreover, it was very obedient. Now that it was killed, if he, as its master, swallowed the insult, would there still be a place for him in the eastern region? Therefore, Chu Xiu must be killed. Even if his master, Gu Zun, came, it would be useless. At the top of the city wall at the border of Lingluo County, Yi Weikong was wearing a white brocade robe, but he was wearing a silver-white armor on the outside. The armor was shining with bright starlight, and there were even traces left by sabers and swords. He had not worn this armor for a long time because it was left to him by Meng Xinghe. It was also made for him by Meng Xinghe when he and Meng Xinghe worked together to establish Cold River City. There was nothing that Xinghe Lu's cultivator did not know. They knew astrology, and they also knew how to forge weapons. Touching the scars on the armor, a trace of reminiscence flashed in Yi Weikong's eyes. In the past, he wore this armor and followed Meng Xinghe to roam the eastern region. They fought their way to a powerful foundation that was comparable to High Heaven Sect and Imperial Sky Pavilion. But now, he was the only one left. He once wanted Meng Xinghe to stay in Cold River City and even asked him to be the city lord, but Meng Xinghe refused without hesitation. Everyone had their own destiny. Meng Xinghe was the successor of Gu Zun. In the future, he would also become a Gu Zun and live in seclusion in the mountains to pass on his bloodline. Only in this way could he live up to the teachings of his ancestral master. Yi Weikong understood Meng Xinghe. Therefore, even if he was very reluctant, he had to personally send his good friend away. Looking in the direction of Jianghu County, Yi Weikong murmured, "Little Meng, I once told you that I want Cold River City to dominate the eastern region and pass on for millions of years. I don't have much time left. This time, let me take the last step." Yi Weikong turned his head and looked at the busy martial artists of Cold River City who were gathering. A cold light could not help but flash in his eyes. No force could last forever. The Imperial Sky Pavilion had enjoyed the legacy of their ancestors for tens of thousands of years. Now it was time to come to an end. In Jianghu County, Chu Xiu was also arranging for people to withdraw from Nan and Prefecture. Nan and Prefecture, the previously abandoned prefecture, was connected to the southern land of barbarism. Therefore, Chu Xiu attached great importance to it. Many people were stationed there, and many of them were elites that he had brought from the mortal world. He had spent a lot of effort to cultivate these people. He didn't want them to die here. After Chu Xiu withdrew from Nan and Prefecture with his people, Yi Weikong immediately began to cross the border with Cold River City and directly advanced to the prefectural governor's mansion. Along the way, Cold River City didn't encounter any decent resistance. It should be said that there was no resistance at all. It was as if the Imperial Sky Pavilion had given up on this place. Qi Wuhan frowned and said, "City Lord, could it be that Chu Xiu already expected that we would attack Jianghu County first, so he withdrew in advance and prepared to ambush us?" Yi Weikong said indifferently, "Ambush? So what?" "Wuhan, sometimes, there's no need to consider so much when doing things. Use your fist first, then use your brain. In the face of absolute strength, everything else is illusory. If there's no ambush, we will directly annihilate Jianghu County and then go to the Imperial Sky Pavilion." If he really called Zhong Qiushui and the others over and set up an ambush in Jianghu County, that's perfect. We can directly annihilate all of them in Jianghu County. No matter how strong the ambush is, it can't be more powerful than the Imperial Sky Pavilion's 10,000 years old formation, can it? Qi Wuhan nodded in understanding. If Chu Xiu really prepared an ambush, it would instead help them achieve their goal. When the entire Cold River City was directly pushed to the foot of Nan's mansion, Chu Xiu finally stood on top of the city wall and revealed himself. He looked down at the Cold River City's martial art practitioners and sighed emotionally. The rise of Cold River City wasn't without reason. Just by looking at the Cold River City's martial art practitioners below, one could see that each and every one of them was extremely sharp and their eyes were shining with a strong fighting spirit. Chu Xiu had been to both the Imperial Sky Pavilion and the High Heaven Sect. In the eyes of the High Heaven Sect's martial art practitioners, most of them were arrogant and conceited. They looked at everyone as if they were looking at a bumpkin. It was as if in their eyes, there were only two sects in the entire Eastern domain. One was the High Heaven Sect, and the other was another sect. As for the Imperial Sky Pavilion, most of the Imperial Sky Pavilion's martial art practitioners actually displayed an indifferent attitude, muddling through life and appearing lethargic. Yi Weikong raised his head to look at Chu Xiu and said indifferently, "You guessed that I would come?" Chu Xiu said, "Of course I guessed. I've killed so many people from your Cold River City. If City Lord Yi could let me go so easily, then you wouldn't be Yi Wei Kong. Even the monks of Tian Luo Bao sect aren't as merciful as you. Yi Wei Kong laughed heartily and said, Chu Xiu, to be honest, I actually admire you very much. I'm not being polite, I'm telling the truth. You do things decisively and without hesitation. You kill when you need to kill and beat when you need to. You're very similar to the way I acted when I was young. But it's a pity that you made the wrong choice. Back then, Little Meng and I were able to build a cold river city that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the great sects that had existed for 10,000 years. But you followed the Imperial Sky Pavilion and could only fall with them. Don't hide anymore. Call out all the people from the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Chu Xiu could guess that Yi Wei Kong would come to find trouble with him. Naturally, Yi Wei Kong could also guess that if Chu Xiu hadn't left, then there would definitely be an ambush in Jianghu County. Therefore, Chu Xiu didn't ask Zhong Qiushui and the others to set up any traps or anything like that. The formations and traps that were set up in a hurry were useless. Zhong Qiushui and a group of cultivators from the Imperial Sky Pavilion appeared on the city walls. He said coldly, Yi Wei Kong, aren't you a little too confident, you old fart? Do you really think that the Imperial Sky Pavilion's 10,000 years of heritage and foundation are made of clay? Yi Wei Kong didn't get angry. He only said indifferently, Zhong Qiushui, I admire you very much. If you were in my cold river city, you would definitely be a top-notch general. But unfortunately, the previous pavilion master didn't put you in an important position, and the current pavilion master is starting to suppress you. How much of your strength can you unleash? Even if you become the pavilion master now, it's useless. The decline of the Imperial Sky Pavilion isn't something that you can turn around by yourself. So what if you have 10,000 years of heritage and foundation? Nothing in this world is eternal. Even the world will be destroyed, let alone a small sect like yours. So what if it was a scheme? So what if it was an ambush? Everything was actually under Yi Wei Kong's control. He had already made up his mind. This time, it was also the last time he would go all out. He would cut the Gordian knot and destroy the Imperial Sky Pavilion. After that, he would leave everything to Qi Wuhan and the next generation. However, right at this moment, a strange smile appeared on Chu Xiu's face. City Lord Yi is very confident, but sometimes, it's best not to be so full of yourself. Sect Master Fong, it's time for you to make an appearance. Your High Heaven sect won't go back on its word, right? As soon as Chu Xiu's voice fell, Fong Yinglong stepped into the air. His 9 dragon robes fluttered in the wind, and his aura soared into the sky. Don't worry, the promise of my High Heaven sect is even stronger than a divine weapon. After seeing Fong Yinglong, Yi Wei Kong's expression finally changed. Things seemed to have gotten out of his control. Chapter 12:10. The moment Fong Yinglong appeared, Yi Wei Kong sensed that the situation was already out of his control. He was aware of the grudge between the High Heaven sect and the Imperial Sky Pavilion, but it was precisely because of this that the High Heaven sect shouldn't be here. He should be watching the tigers fight from the sidelines. Yi Wei Kong stared at Fong Yinglong and said in a deep voice, I really didn't expect the High Heaven sect to take action this time. Do you think the threat of my cold river city is even greater than that of your old enemy, the Imperial Sky Pavilion? Fong Yinglong nodded and said, That's right. Your threat is indeed greater than that of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. The High Heaven sect and the Imperial Sky Pavilion have been fighting for tens of thousands of years, so we know the Imperial Sky Pavilion very well. We know where their upper and lower limits are. However, I don't know much about your cold river city. An unknown existence is the most worthy of caution. Hearing the conversation between Yi Wei Kong and Fong Yinglong, Chu Xiu suddenly felt that the Daluotian people still had a lot of strong points. For example, they were very straightforward in their actions and words. They rarely played games. For example, if Fong Yinglong were to be replaced by the people from the Righteous Path's sects in the lower realm right now, they would definitely talk about how they could not allow Fong Yinglong to destroy the Imperial Sky Pavilion in order to ensure the East's peace and stability. However, Fong Yinglong was very straightforward. I feel that you are a greater threat than the Imperial Sky Pavilion, so I will obstruct you and not let you succeed. There was no such thing as a big reason. It was just that it concerned the interests of the sect, so he had to do it. However, Fang Yinglong paused and looked at Chu Xiu. Of course, this is only one of the reasons. The other reason is that this Chu is eloquent and has a profound understanding of the Tao of domination. The conditions he proposed are something that the High Heaven sect can't refuse. As soon as these words were spoken, Chu Xiu immediately felt Yi Weikong's gaze turn towards him, and his gaze contained killing intent. Chu Xiu. He didn't feel that Fang Yinglong was straightforward. Although he was a martial immortal expert, his thoughts were very dirty. He didn't forget to make a junior cultivator hate him at a time like this. Looking at Fang Yinglong, Yi Weikong suddenly smiled. Fang Yinglong, when was the last time we fought? A few decades or 100 years ago. At that time, you were not even a martial immortal. The #1 expert in the eastern region. I have never fought with you for this position. It has been yours from the very beginning. This time, I want to experience exactly how strong you, the #1 expert in the eastern region, are. A martial immortal level expert would not retreat so easily. Last time, Yi Weikong had only wanted to teach Chu Xiu a lesson but ended up running into a primeval sovereign. It didn't matter that time, so he retreated. This time, he had gathered the elites of the entire Cold River City to destroy the Imperial Sky Pavilion in one go. How could he possibly retreat? The extremely powerful Lord of Cold River City in the past would not retreat twice in the same place. As soon as Yi Weikong finished speaking, he took a step forward. The aura around him was like a whirlwind, and it gave rise to waves of icy storms. The shrill cold wind mixed with snowflakes drifted down. As Yi Weikong's aura rose explosively to the peak, an area of several hundred feet around him was instantly enveloped by the winter snow. Chu Xiu felt as though he was in the drift-snow city of the northern realms in the lower realms. Chu Xiu could not tell the aura of a martial immortal expert. He only knew that the other party was very strong. However, Fang Yinglong's expression changed. 7th Heaven Martial Immortal. You've actually stepped into the 7th Heaven. Previously, there had been rumors in the eastern region that Yi Weikong had the strength of the 6th heaven and could reach the 7th heaven if he exerted his full strength. But now, he actually had the strength of the 7th heaven. Zhong Qiushui's expression also turned solemn. When he fought with Yi Weikong last time, the other party actually held back. His true strength of the 7th heaven was most likely prepared for the High Heaven sect. Although the martial immortal realm was divided into 9 levels in detail, everyone still habitually thought that the 1st to the 3rd heaven was a world, the 4th to the 6th heaven was another world, and the 7th to the 9th heaven was the real peak of the martial immortal realm. The difference of one level between the 6th heaven and the 7th heaven was actually very big. Therefore, when Yi Weikong exerted his full strength, it was close to the 7th heaven. However, the gap between the 7th heaven and the 8th heaven was not that big. Now, Yi Weikong was not only a cause for fear, but also fully qualified to challenge Fang Yinglong, the #1 expert in the eastern region. There was no expression on Yi Weikong's face, but behind him, layers of frost storms danced, and finally turned into a huge ice dragon roaring. Yi Weikong stretched out his hand and the huge ice dragon turned into a dragon-shaped long saber in his hand. In the dragon-shaped long saber, frost flowed. It did not contain his world power, but a kind of world rules. Yi Weikong was equivalent to turning a divine ability into a weapon and holding it in his hand. Fang Yinglong took a step forward. 9 dragons roared around him, and golden dragons made of energy spiraled in the air, tearing at Yi Weikong. When martial immortals truly fought, the might they gave off was akin to a battle between deities. It was truly destructive. Thus, Fang Yinglong and Yi Weikong appeared in the air and fought fiercely. They did not land on the ground. However, Zhong Qiushui, who was standing next to Chu Xiu, had a conflicted expression, as if he didn't know if he should go or not. Chu Xiu said in confusion, "Pavilion Master, what are you waiting for? Even if we can't defeat Yi Weikong by joining hands with Fang Yinglong, we must at least seriously injure him. You wouldn't be thinking of watching the tigers fight, right?" Zhong Qiushui's expression turned a bit ugly. What am I waiting for? One is an 8th level martial immortal, the other is a 7th level martial immortal. If I charge forward, I'm afraid I'll be the first one to be seriously injured. Chu Xiu said in surprise, they're both martial immortals, and there's only a difference of a few heavens. Why is there such a huge difference? Zhong Qiushui snorted coldly, a difference of a few heavens? When you were at the True Fire Spirit Refinement realm, you could easily kill Profound Insight realm cultivators. How did you look at those ordinary True Fire Spirit Refinement realm cultivators back then? That's how Fang Yinglong and Yi Wei Kong look at me now. Chu Xiu was speechless after hearing Zhong Qiushui's words. If that was the case, the difference was quite huge. However, even though Zhong Qiushui said that, he still charged forward and attacked Yi Wei Kong together with Fang Yinglong. Yi Wei Kong was seriously injured, and the Royal Sky Pavilion benefited the most from it. Besides, if he really didn't attack and angered Fang Yinglong, they would be dumbfounded. However, Zhong Qiushui was indeed a bit miserable. He had just charged forward when Yi Wei Kong smashed him down with a punch. Chu Xiu could only watch the battle between martial immortals. In fact, he couldn't even understand the battle between Fang Yinglong and Yi Wei Kong. So, Chu Xiu didn't stay idle. With a wave of his hand, he ordered his subordinates and the cultivators of the Royal Sky Pavilion to attack Cold River City together. This time, Chu Xiu really didn't hold back. All the elites under him who had participated in the battle to exterminate Blood River sect also charged forward with him. It didn't matter whether the Royal Sky Pavilion existed or not. What was important was that Cold River City had already viewed Chu Xiu as a thorn in its side. If he didn't seriously injure Yi Wei Kong, his Kangwu County would never have a day of peace. Chu Xiu had just stepped into the battlefield when Qi Wuhan, who was clad in icy blue armor, leaped in front of Chu Xiu. His eyes flickered with chilling killing intent. Chu Xiu, if I had known this earlier, I would have killed you at all costs when I was in Lingluo County. At this time, Qi Wuhan was really regretful. At that time, he thought that he had attached great importance to Chu Xiu. He didn't expect that he didn't attach enough importance to Chu Xiu. Given Cold River City's size, they only had one chance to strike. If they failed to annihilate the Imperial Heaven Pavilion this time, they would not be able to make up for the manpower and resources they had consumed. The next time they struck, unless something unexpected happened to the Imperial Heaven Pavilion, Cold River City might have to wait for a very long time before they could accumulate such strength again. All this was because Chu Xiu had used some method to invite the High Heaven sect to attack. At all costs? Qi Wuhan, you're thinking too much. Even if you really wanted to kill me at all costs, the result might be worse than now. Qi Wuhan shouted angrily. He didn't want to talk nonsense with Chu Xiu anymore. He opened up his domain. Endless storms condensed in the domain and shrouded Chu Xiu directly. Yi Wei Kong was fighting desperately above, so he naturally had to fight desperately below. In fact, Cold River City really had no way out. After all, their foundation was the shallowest. If they didn't take advantage of the fact that Yi Wei Kong was still alive and Cold River City was at its peak to attack and lay a foundation, no one knew what the next generation would be like. The god domain around Chu Xiu opened up and directly bombarded Qi Wuhan with his domain. In the god domain, the 5 elements were in disorder, yin and yang were reversed, and a powerful force twisted and strangled everything. Qi Wuhan's domain was very fragile in front of Chu Xiu's domain. It was directly melted and swallowed up quickly. At this moment, Qi Wuhan looked at Chu Xiu as if he had seen a ghost. Everyone had a domain. Although different domain attributes did restrain each other, it also depended on the specific strength of the martial artist. Now, Chu Xiu's realm was obviously lower than his, but his domain completely restrained him. What kind of domain was this? Seeing that Chu Xiu's god domain had eroded his domain step by step, Qi Wuhan roared angrily. A huge ice dragon behind him roared, integrated into his fist wind, and directly punched at Chu Xiu. Wherever the punch passed, even the essence of heaven and earth seemed to be stagnant and frozen, but Chu Xiu didn't dodge. He also punched. The fire of internal force around his body was burning and blooming, and the qi and blood in his body had boiled to the extreme. Before Chu Xiu fought with Qi Wuhan, he knew that Qi Wuhan's Ice Soul divine power was extremely powerful and overbearing, which could freeze internal force, qi, blood, and even spirit. Therefore, at this time, Chu Xiu burned the fire of internal force to the extreme, making his qi and blood boil. Qi Wuhan couldn't freeze this pure physical strength. The two fists collided like an explosion of ice and fire. Chu Xiu's figure stood still, but Qi Wuhan was directly blasted away. Chapter 12:11. The last time Qi Wuhan had seen Chu Xiu fight was during the martial arts duel in Lingxiao City. At that time, Chu Xiu had yet to truly step into the mysterious heaven and earth realm. Therefore, Qi Wuhan's impression of Chu Xiu's strength also remained at that time. For others, there shouldn't be any changes in their strength in less than a year. However, for Chu Xiu, the difference in strength between the current him and him during the martial arts gamble was like heaven and earth. This world of difference was not because Chu Xiu had officially stepped into the mysterious heaven and earth realm, but because he had seen heavenly souls and thoroughly sorted out his martial arts. His control over his strength had reached the peak. Qi Wuhan looked at Chu Xiu in shock, but before he could recover from his shock, Chu Xiu had already attacked again. The fierce blade radiance on the formation seemed to have condensed into a substance and slashed towards the ground. Earth devastation, one of the 7 ultimate limits, was unleashed. The powerful force penetrated the ground, and in the next moment, the ground under Qi Wuhan's feet began to crack inch by inch. Countless blade lights rose up from under his feet, enveloping him within. There was a strange power in the blade radiance, as if the ground under Qi Wuhan's feet had produced a strong suction force, making it impossible for him to break free. In the next moment, layers of icicle armor began to appear around Qi Wuhan's body to resist the blade radiance. Although the icicles would be torn apart by the blade radiance in an instant, they condensed in the blink of an eye and consumed the power of the blade radiance. In the end, an ice dragon bloomed around Qi Wuhan's body, surrounding him to break free from the suction force and step into the air. However, at that moment, a blade radiance with an extreme sharpness that could cut through everything fell. It tore apart the icicles around Qi Wuhan's body and directly tore apart the armor on his body. Qi Wuhan roared angrily, and his left hand grabbed onto Chu Xiu's formation. The extremely sharp formation tore open the web between his thumb and index finger. After the dark red blood flowed out, it turned into an icy blue color and spread up the knife god. This made Chu Xiu frown. He could feel that the cold blood had actually frozen the artifact spirit that had broken the formation. It was even freezing his physical body and stellar energy. As the heir of Cold River City, Qi Wuhan certainly had a trump card. Not everyone was like Chu Xiu, who could successfully grasp a divine ability at the true fire spirit refinement realm. But for people like Qi Wuhan, although they couldn't master divine abilities, they managed to control part of the power of divine abilities through various methods. For example, Lu Sanjin's small swords that had the power of divine powers, and now, Qi Wuhan had integrated the power of laws into his flesh and blood, using the power of his flesh and blood to drive the laws of heaven and earth. Under the suppression of the ice-cold blood, even though Chu Xiu had unleashed the true fire of his inner strength to its limits, he was still unable to melt it quickly. At this time, Qi Wuhan's right fist smashed down with a powerful force. The coldness condensed, and the ice crystal burst. Chu Xiu sneered and also used his left fist to fight against Qi Wuhan with pure strength. He didn't fall into a disadvantageous position at all, and even faintly suppressed Qi Wuhan. Qi Wuhan already felt that something was wrong as he fought. Chu Xiu's physical strength was amazing. Even though he was at the peak of the mysterious enlightenment realm, he didn't have the upper hand in this kind of battle. In particular, although he had refined the power of laws into his flesh and blood, and he was using this power to suppress Chu Xiu's artifact spirit and a part of his own power, what he lost was the power of qi and blood. Feeling that something was wrong, the next moment, a faint blue light bloomed in Qi Wuhan's eyes. The coldness went straight to the mind, trying to freeze Chu Xiu's primordial spirit. Cold River City was not good at primordial spirit's secret methods. This kind of power to freeze primordial spirit was just a manifestation of the power of laws. But the next moment, Qi Wuhan's complexion changed. Because his divine light that could freeze primordial spirit directly penetrated Chu Xiu's body and completely missed. Illusion again. Qi Wuhan secretly said that it was not good. He had long known that Chu Xiu had a very strange illusion, and even he couldn't see the flaws and weaknesses. He had just dispersed all his spiritual force around to investigate the surrounding movement, but in the next moment, his face suddenly darkened, and he secretly cursed. That was an illusion just now, but it was not the illusion he had imagined. His own hand was still on the blade, and the qi and blood integrated with the power of laws was still suppressing the power of Chu Xiu. How could Chu Xiu escape with an illusion? Therefore, the icy divine light just now was not avoided by Chu Xiu, but was forcibly resisted by him. Instead, Chu Xiu used an illusion to confuse him. At this time, Qi Wuhan wanted to withdraw his spiritual force, but it was too late. The powerful primordial spirit impact, like an arrow, penetrated his mind. It was an arrow condensed by the pure power of primordial spirit, extremely simple, without any auxiliary power. But because of this, Qi Wuhan, who had just spread out his spiritual force, could not defend. The power of primordial spirit exploded, and Qi Wuhan immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. His face turned pale, and his left hand finally broke away from the broken formation. The next moment, the scorching true fire of the sun and the evil fire of world annihilation ignited around Chu Xiu at the same time. His figure began to directly soar, and in an instant, all the power around him was swallowed up by him. When the law phenomenon was performed, at this moment, Chu Xiu was like a powerful devil god who could chase the clouds and the sun and control the power of flames in the ancient legends. When his fist smashed down, there was a loud explosion. All the power around Qi Wuhan was completely shattered, his gang qi was broken, and his battle armor was shattered. He was blown away by Chu Xiu for dozens of feet, and a large amount of blood gushed out. The power of the law phenomenon only lasted for a time before it was stopped by Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu had used this magic many times, and now he could almost control the power in it perfectly, so he would not be completely sucked up by the power in it. At this time, Qi Wuhan was extremely miserable. The punch of the law phenomenon, which had reached the extreme power, almost shattered half of the bones and meridians in their bodies, and they were directly injured. He was the future heir of Cold River City, and he carried the ambition to destroy the Imperial Sky Pavilion and strengthen Cold River City in the future. In the end, all these things were blasted away in front of Chu Xiu's punch. Of course, these useless, sorrowful things only existed in Qi Wuhan's mind for a little time, and then they were extinguished by him. Because now was not the time to think about these things. Behind him, Chu Xiu had already slashed at him with a saber. Qi Wuhan fiercely gritted his teeth, and the remaining power around him was pushed to the extreme. The blood and qi in his whole body were suffused with an extremely cold color, and his body suddenly burst out like an ice arrow. Moreover, there was still a deep chill behind him, affecting Chu Xiu and delaying his power movement. Chu Xiu frowned slightly. In fact, this time, if there was a chance, he wanted to kill all the warriors in Cold River City here. He had completely fallen out with Cold River City. After killing Ancestor Blood River, Cold River City was even more eager to get rid of him. If he took this opportunity to completely destroy Cold River City, his southern barbaric land would be much more stable in the future. However, Cold River City was not easy to deal with. Not to mention Yi Weikong, Qi Wuhan had a lot of trump cards. He only wanted to escape at all costs, so Chu Xiu really couldn't do anything to him. At this time, Chu Xiu was also struggling whether he should use the magical power of Clear Sky Reflecting Shadow to keep Qi Wuhan here. Once Clear Sky Reflecting Shadow was used, as long as Qi Wuhan was still in his sight, he would almost certainly die. However, when he was dealing with Luo Mo last time, Chu Xiu had already felt the power and powerful backlash of this move. Using it to deal with Qi Wuhan, no matter how he looked at it, it felt like using a dragon blade to kill a chicken. It was not worth it. Just as Chu Xiu was struggling, A wild laughter suddenly came. Even if the blood turns blue, it is still blood. With me, Blood Sea Demon Venerable, Lu Jianghu here, no one can escape. Endless qi and blood converged into a mighty sea of blood, and strands of blood condensed from the sea of blood. As Lu Jianghu waved his hand, those blood strands directly wrapped around Qi Wuhan's body, affecting the power of qi and blood in his body. Qi Wuhan suddenly froze there, looking at Lu Jianghu with eyes full of resentment and hatred. At this time, Lu Jianghu had already stepped into the mysterious heaven and earth realm. With his strength foundation, even after the breakthrough, he directly skipped the early stage of mysterious heaven and earth realm, which needed to adapt to the power. In fact, Lu Jianghu was able to step into this realm thanks to the soul blood of Blood River ancestor that Chu Xiu brought back. There was only a small ball of soul blood, but it was used by Blood River ancestor to store the true spirit. It was not contaminated at all, and it was extremely pure. Although after Lu Jianghu obtained the small ball of qi and blood, he was still complaining that Chu Xiu was stingy and only brought back such a small thing for him. After he began to refine the small ball of qi and blood, he immediately felt the power coming from the soul blood. He immediately stopped complaining and began to cultivate in seclusion. Previously, Lu Jianghu was already at the peak of the true fire spirit refinement realm. If it wasn't because he was too lazy to cultivate in seclusion, he might even have reached the mysterious heaven and earth realm by now. Therefore, at this time, when Lu Jianghu broke through, his strength was so powerful that it did not seem like he was at the early stage of mysterious heaven and earth realm at all. With Lu Jianghu holding back Qi Wuhan, the formation breaking tool in Chu Xiu's hand bloomed with extreme sharpness. When the knife slashed down, Qi Wuhan's hand formed a seal to block it, but one of his arms was instantly torn off. At the next moment, Qi Wuhan roared angrily, and the ice blue qi and blood around his body condensed in his other hand, flashing with extremely strong power. However, at this time, Lu Jianghu sneered and said, "You don't learn from your mistakes. How dare you play with qi and blood in front of me, Blood Sea Demon Venerable?" As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Jianghu waved his hand, and the ice blue qi and blood in Qi Wuhan's body began to run wildly and flow backward. The instant backlash caused Qi Wuhan to vomit a large mouthful of blood, and his aura became extremely low. Just as Lu Jianghu was about to say something proudly, the formation breaking tool's extreme sharpness had already fallen, and Qi Wuhan's head was directly cut off. Lu Jianghu turned his head and looked at Chu Xiu with dissatisfaction. "You stole my head." Chapter 12:12. Lu Jianghu was very upset that Chu Xiu had stolen his kill. He wasn't a monster like Chu Xiu, who killed heaven and earth mysterious state cultivators like killing chickens when he was in the true fire spirit refinement state. This was the first time he could kill someone in the heaven and earth mysterious state, but Chu Xiu had stolen his kill. He was very dissatisfied. However, Lu Jianghu was tactful and didn't complain about this. Instead, he went to Chu Xiu and mumbled, "Official Chu, Cult Master Chu, now that I'm in the heaven and earth mysterious state, shouldn't you consider changing my title to Blood Sea Lord? Patriarch Dugu had 4 demon lords in the past. You can't have one less, can you? This way, I'll be Blood Sea Lord. Old Wei has prestige and has worked hard all these years, so there must be a place for him. As for Old Shang, although he isn't very capable and has a bad temper, he's in the heaven and earth mysterious state. Give him the title of Demon Lord. Keep the last one. Let's see who steps into the heaven and earth mysterious state first between Lu Fengxian and Mei Qinglian. What do you think?" Compared to the head of a heaven and earth mysterious state cultivator, Lu Jianghu cared more about the position of Blood Sea Lord. Lu Jianghu had been obsessed with this position for 500 years, so much so that it had almost become an obsession. However, Chu Xiu didn't care about Lu Jianghu. Instead, he looked at the sky with a grave expression. With Qi Wuhan's death, Yi Weikong had gone mad. Qi Wuhan was actually very important to Yi Weikong because he was the successor he had chosen. He was the next leader of Cold River City and the future of Cold River City. Therefore, to Yi Weikong, Qi Wuhan was even more important than his own son. But now, Qi Wuhan had died in the hands of Chu Xiu. What did this mean? It meant that Cold River City had almost no future. After all, Cold River City had only risen for one generation, so its foundation was relatively weak. Although as long as Yi Weikong was here, it was still possible to nurture another successor, but there wasn't enough time. Could a successor that was nurtured in a hurry compare to Qi Wuhan? Yi Weikong didn't know. Therefore, in his opinion, the future of Cold River City was uncertain after Qi Wuhan's death. With a furious roar, Yi Weikong's power erupted to its peak. He even had the feeling of putting his life on the line. This kind of imposing power instantly caused Zhong Qiushui to cough up blood. Even Fang Yinglong could only retreat, not daring to face it head-on. After all, Fang Yinglong was only here to help. It was fine as long as the Imperial Sky Pavilion was not destroyed and the balance in the East region was not affected. Why should he fight to the death with Yi Weikong? Therefore, under this kind of situation, Yi Weikong was able to unleash his godly might, heavily injuring Zhong Qiushui and forcing Fang Yinglong to retreat. However, his own consumption was not small. He glanced coldly at Zhong Qiushui and Fang Yinglong, and also looked deeply at Chu Xiu. Yi Weikong directly turned around and left, retreating with the people of Cold River City. Although he was angry now, Yi Weikong also knew that if he didn't leave now, he wouldn't have another chance. Qi Wuhan was dead, and Cold River City had no successor, but its future was uncertain. But if he were to die here today, then Cold River City would really be destroyed. Seeing that Yi Weikong wanted to escape, Chu Xiu hurriedly shouted at Fang Yinglong, "Sect Master Fang. If Yi Weikong leaves safely now, High Heaven Sect will have endless troubles in the future." Fang Yinglong glanced at Chu Xiu and snorted coldly, "Of course I know." Although Fang Yinglong was not a cultivator of the same generation as Yi Weikong, he also knew that Yi Weikong was a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. If he returned to Cold River City unscathed, he would definitely find a way to take revenge on High Heaven Sect. Therefore, Fang Yinglong also hung behind Yi Weikong, attacking unhurriedly. The Eastern Territory needed balance. Unless Emperor Sky Pavilion and Cold River City were destroyed at the same time, it would be better for both Cold River City and Emperor Sky Pavilion to weaken, leaving High Heaven Sect alone to maintain the balance in the Eastern Territory. Because Yi Weikong had to escape while protecting his disciples of Cold River City, he had suffered a lot of injuries at this time. However, he forced himself to retreat to the edge of the southern barbaric land, close to Lingluo County. 9 dragons coiled around Fang Yinglong, directly supporting a heaven and earth, trapping Yi Weikong in it. Yi Weikong also sensed that this should be Fang Yinglong's last attack, and it was also his strongest attack. Therefore, in the next moment, Yi Weikong's aura had completely condensed into his body. His seemingly light finger descended, but the boundless cold air in midair condensed into a huge finger that descended. Everywhere it passed, everything was frozen. Even time was frozen in the same way. This was Yi Weikong's unique and powerful divine ability, the freezing ice divine finger. Although it sounded ordinary and even resembled a low-level martial skill, it was a genuine and powerful divine ability that could change the laws of heaven and earth. The 9 dragons that seemed capable of tearing apart the heavens and earth were frozen in midair, and endless power was roaring. At that instant, Chu Xiu seemed to have seen the end of the world. There was no longer any color in midair. He could only see the void being torn apart by the 2 powers, and the storm that had turned into astral energy howling furiously. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes, and pushed the heaven's sun gazing at air to the extreme, wanting to see the rules of the battle. Unfortunately, the cultivation of a level 8 martial immortal was simply too powerful. Even though Chu Xiu's eyes had turned completely red, so much so that his eyes were bloodshot, he was only barely able to see the faint power of laws. But to Chu Xiu's relief, Yi Weikong couldn't hold on much longer. After all, Fang Yinglong was a level higher than him, and he had the inheritance of High Heaven Sect, so in terms of power, he was still stronger than Yi Weikong. The 2 sides had already fought to this extent. Even if Fang Yinglong didn't want to fight to the death, he couldn't stop at this time. Just when Chu Xiu thought that the 2 of them were going to fight to the death, in the depths of the southern barbaric land, clouds of smoke rolled down, and a powerful aura suddenly erupted like a volcano. The aura actually overlapped with Yi Weikong's and Fang Yinglong's aura, and directly shrouded the area visible to the naked eye. The aura that erupted in the southern barbaric land didn't belong to anyone, but the pure world Qi. With the addition of this aura, it gave Yi Weikong and Fang Yinglong some leeway. The two of them restrained their power almost at the same time. Fang Yinglong's complexion was only a little pale, but Yi Weikong's aura was extremely unstable. Obviously, because of the fierce battle and the divine ability he used, his source energy was injured. The two of them looked at each other, and a touch of surprise appeared in their eyes. They shouted in a low voice, "It's a blessed paradise!" As a martial immortal level expert, as well as the leader of a peak power in the Daluo heaven, they were all people who had seen the world. Thus, they naturally knew what was going on. That aura was the aura of the birth of a blessed abode. Currently, the interior of the Daluocean was controlled by the major sections. There was basically no undiscovered blessed paradise. But in the southern barbaric land, an undeveloped area, it was normal for a blessed paradise to appear. In fact, Li Wuxiang had been to the place where the aura of the blessed paradise appeared before. Back then, due to the barbarian tribe's uprising, Li Wuxiang suppressed them and killed quite a few people. However, he didn't discover the blessed paradise. Perhaps it was because Li Wuxiang's power wasn't enough, but this time, two 8th-level martial immortal experts were fighting fiercely. Furthermore, it was a battle of life and death using their full power. It caused the surrounding natural laws to change, and thus, the power of the blessed paradise was triggered, causing it to appear. The blessed abode had already appeared in the world. Moreover, Fang Yinglong only wanted to suppress Cold River City. He didn't want to force Yi Weikong into a life-and-death struggle. Therefore, he didn't continue to attack and directly headed in the direction of the blessed abode. The blessed paradise was formed by the natural world. It was the first time a blessed paradise had been opened. Perhaps there were some powerful existences formed by the natural world, and some dangers. But at the same time, the blessed paradise that hadn't been opened for countless years also contained countless natural treasures. Following behind the two people, Chu Xiu's eyes revealed a hint of pity. The blessed paradise's appearance was too untimely. Even if it was a few dozen breaths later, the outcome of the battle between Fang Yinglong and Yi Weikong would be decided. But looking at Yi Weikong's appearance, his source energy should have suffered heavy damage. At least, he wouldn't be able to fight for a period of time. The appearance of such an unexploited blessed paradise was a great opportunity for anyone. Right now, the opportunity was right in front of Chu Xiu. Naturally, Chu Xiu wouldn't sit back and do nothing. Although Fang Yinglong was there, and the martial immortal expert definitely got the most out of it, it was still good for him to go in and have a sip of the soup. After following Yi Weikong and Fang Yinglong into the depths of the southern barbaric land, Chu Xiu finally saw the appearance of the so-called blessed paradise. The blessed paradise was a pure space. To be precise, it should be a subsidiary space of the Daluocean. It was an independent but attached existence to the Daluocean. The mystic worlds in the lower realm should also be regarded as a kind of blessed paradise. Even the green capital space where Shang Tianliang was located was a blessed paradise. The blessed paradise that Chu Xiu had seen before was formed after 10,000 years of transformation and accumulation in High Heaven Sect and Imperial Sky Pavilion. The pure natural blessed paradise in front of him really surprised Chu Xiu. There was no entrance to the blessed paradise in front of him, but it was like a huge grave mound, sitting on the ground and stretching for hundreds of meters. The aura it exuded was incredibly pure and powerful. Fang Yinglong stared at the huge mound and frowned. A natural spirit array? At present, the huge mound had yet to be exposed, and there was a huge natural spirit array hidden under it. Generally speaking, a blessed paradise that could give birth to a spirit array of this level was not ordinary. While there were opportunities, there were also great dangers. Chapter 12-13. Fang Yinglong couldn't open the blessed cave paradise that suddenly appeared. Although Fang Yinglong could break the spirit array by force, he could easily destroy the blessed cave paradise. Fang Yinglong spoke indifferently as he gazed at Yi Weikong. Yi Weikong, your luck is very good. Lead the members of your Cold River City and retreat. Otherwise, your Cold River City won't even be able to keep its last trace of survival. Yi Weikong snorted coldly and said, My Cold River City can't survive. Is this what your High Heaven sect wants? Fang Yinglong, your High Heaven sect is too calculative. It's fine if you want to maintain your position as the overlord of the East Territory, but there will come a day when you can't control the situation. After saying that, Yi Weikong turned around and left. Before leaving, he looked deeply at Chu Xiu with undisguised killing intent in his eyes. Chu Xiu looked back without fear. Because of the South Barbaric Land, the conflict between him, Yi Weikong, and Cold River City could no longer be reconciled. Anyway, a great enmity had been formed. So what if he bore a grudge? Although it didn't feel good to bear a grudge from a martial immortal powerhouse. Fang Yinglong said to Chu Xiu calmly, According to our previous agreement, I've already helped you take care of Yi Weikong. Now, your Imperial Sky Pavilion should also keep your promise and hand over that prefecture. Don't make me, White Sovereign City, go and take it myself. Chu Xiu said lightly, Don't worry. The Imperial Sky Pavilion won't go back on its promise. Anyway, that province belonged to the Imperial Sky Pavilion, not him, Chu Xiu. Of course, he wouldn't feel bad about it. Glancing at the big tomb, Fang Yinglong said in a deep voice, When this blessed cave paradise appears, there will definitely be a lot of powerhouses who will enter and compete for it. In particular, the place where this blessed cave paradise will appear is very awkward. It doesn't belong to our East Territory, but to the South Barbaric Land. So, when the time comes, there may be big sects and powerhouses from the South Territory coming to snatch it. The cultivators of the East Territory should unite together to fight against the outsiders first and then distribute the benefits. When you go back, tell Zhong Qiushui about this. I'll go back to High Heaven Sect and invite some array grandmasters to come and crack the natural spirit array in this blessed cave paradise. With that, Fang Yinglong turned around and left. He was not afraid that the Royal Sky Pavilion would be the first to enter the blessed paradise. Zhong Qiushui was also a martial immortal level expert, and the Royal Sky Pavilion also had their own heritage. He should know the consequences of forcibly breaching the blessed paradise. A moment later, Zhong Qiushui also rushed over from behind. However, Zhong Qiushui looked a little miserable. His face was pale, and even Chu Xiu could feel that his aura seemed to be a little unstable. Chu Xiu asked in surprise, Pavilion Master, your injuries are this serious? Zhong Qiushui snorted coldly and said, Did your master not teach you the difference between martial immortals? A gap of 1 heavenly layer can be made up for, but I'm 3 or 4 heavenly layers weaker than them. To be able to block their power is already not bad. This kind of thing was actually not shameful. After all, these two people, one was recognized as the strongest in the Eastern Domain, and the other was also the Lord of Cold River City, who had risen to fame in the whole Daluocean in the recent hundreds of years. Yi Weikong left? Chu Xiu pointed to the large tomb in front of him and said, The power caused by their fight was too strong, and it drew out this hidden blessed paradise. Naturally, they couldn't fight. However, this is also a good thing. Our Royal Sky Pavilion is close to the water, and when this blessed paradise is opened, we can also share some of the benefits. Zhong Qiushui sighed and shook his head. I'm afraid it won't be that easy. I'd rather not have this blessed paradise. It's best if I get rid of that old guy Yi Weikong. This time, that old guy Yi Weikong was seriously injured and didn't die. When he makes a move again, I'm afraid it won't be so easy to deal with him. Also, although this blessed paradise is the closest to my Royal Sky Pavilion, it's deep in the southern barbaric land. I'm afraid it will attract those people from the southern domain. Those people from the southern domain are not to be trifled with. I'll stay here for a while and wait for the people from High Heaven Sect to come before fighting for it. Matters involving the two domains are no longer something my sect can influence. It's up to High Heaven Sect to take the lead. As the #1 sect in the Eastern Domain, High Heaven Sect has shown enough prestige, so when it comes to the critical moment, High Heaven Sect must stand at the forefront on behalf of the Eastern Domain. After becoming the Pavilion Master of Royal Sky Pavilion, Zhong Qiushui's character had changed a lot, becoming much calmer. If it was in the past, Zhong Qiushui wouldn't have said such cowardly words, but now it was natural. As long as he could preserve the strength of Royal Sky Pavilion as much as possible, what couldn't Zhong Qiushui do? After a few days, the entire southern barbaric land was bustling with noise and excitement. Many Eastern region martial artists came to watch when they heard about the birth of a blessed place. Perhaps some people had the thought of getting a piece of the pie. Although many people knew that they didn't even have the qualification to drink soup in front of the top sects, they still came. After all, the birth of a blessed paradise was not common. It should be said that it had not been common in recent years. When these ancient sects first came to the Daluotian continent, there were still many blessed paradises. Some big sects even established their sects around those blessed paradises. However, after so many years had passed, the blessed lands that should have been excavated had already been excavated. It was rare to hear news of the blessed lands appearing in the world. This was something that would only happen once in 1,000 years. Most of the people in the Jianghu did not want to give up on it. While waiting for High Heaven Sect to come, in addition to arranging his stronghold in the southern barbaric land and paying attention to the concealment, Chu Xiu also contacted Tianhun once. Tianhun told Chu Xiu not to follow the old path of Duge Weiwei, but this old path only referred to learning and imitating Duge Weiwei's martial Dao route. As for some experience in martial Dao cultivation and other aspects, it didn't matter. Even the same martial skill, even if it was inherited from Duge Weiwei, as long as Chu Xiu could infuse it into his own martial Dao, then his future path would be different from Duge Weiwei's. Once again contacting Chu Xiu, Tianhun nodded in satisfaction and said, "Not bad, very good. Your strength is much stronger than last time." Chu Xiu said in surprise, "You're able to sense my specific strength through just a essence-soul connection?" Tianhun smiled and said, "You and I were originally one, so naturally, we can sense each other. However, your memory has been erased, so you can't sense me, but I can clearly sense you." What Tianhun said was very reasonable, but Chu Xiu felt a little uncomfortable. He didn't want others to sense him, even if this person was once an existence of the same origin as him. "Well, time is pressing. Let's not talk nonsense. You asked me to come, is there a problem?" Chu Xiu said, "It's not a problem of cultivation, but a problem about the blessed grotto heaven, which is the natural mystic realm in the lower realm. In the southern barbarian land under my jurisdiction, a new unexploited blessed grotto heaven has appeared. It should attract many big sects to compete for it. However, that place is in the southern barbarian land. No matter who gets that place in the end, they will definitely occupy it. I'm worried that my stronghold in the southern barbarian land will be discovered. Is there a way to destroy it with my strength?" This matter was what Chu Xiu had been thinking about during this time, but he didn't come up with a result. In the end, he had to ask Tianhun for help. In fact, it was a good thing to have a blessed grotto heaven appear. Even if it appeared next to the Tsang'an mansion, Chu Xiu didn't care. At worst, he could just give up the prefectural guard mansion. But the southern barbarian land was related to the passage to the lower realm. Chu Xiu couldn't just give it up. Tianhun raised his eyebrows and said, "You want to destroy a blessed grotto heaven?" This thing can be said to be difficult, but it can also be said to be simple. Whether it is the so-called blessed grotto heaven or the mystic realm, they are actually small spaces parasitic on a complete world. Although they have rich qi of heaven and earth and can produce all kinds of strange phenomena, it also proves that they are incomplete and fragile. As long as you have enough strength, you can completely destroy them by force. Of course, your current strength is still a little weak, so you can only use another way, that is to find the core of the mystic realm. Core? Tianhun nodded and said, "In fact, every mystic realm will have a core. The core is the strongest point in the mystic realm and also the existence that supports the entire mystic realm. As long as you can destroy it or find a way to bring it out, the mystic realm will naturally be destroyed. Do you see the pillar tied to me behind me? That is the core of this spiritual cloud realm, but its original body was just an ordinary iron pillar. Later, many Daluotian masters joined forces to refine it into this shape. If you are lucky, the core of the mystic realm can be easily destroyed or taken away. If it is like this thing behind me, which is strong enough to support a small world, then you can only blame your bad luck. Although Tianhun pointed out a path for Chu Xiu, this path still depended on luck. Chu Xiu now felt that the feng shui of the southern barbarian land seemed to be a little bad. There were always some big and small things happening here. No wonder the Imperial Sky Pavilion was unwilling to develop here before. A few days later, High Heaven Sect came again, and it was not Fang Yinglong who came alone. Instead, he brought a large number of High Heaven Sect elites and Linghu Immortal Mountain. The entire High Heaven Sect was left with only Qin Baiyuan. Similarly, in the Imperial Sky Pavilion, Lu Sanjin also came with a group of Imperial Sky Pavilion elites, but compared to High Heaven Sect, they looked a little shabby. After High Heaven Sect arrived, they directly sealed off the Heavenly Cave Blessed Land and began to crack the Natural Spirit Array. Although this overbearing action made some Eastern Territory cultivators a little unhappy, High Heaven Sect had dominated the Eastern Territory for so many years. Even if they were unhappy, what could they do? They could only obediently step aside. At this moment, a playful voice suddenly sounded. The southern barbarian land does not belong to your Eastern Territory. Does your High Heaven Sect really think that it is not the Eastern Territory but the Daluotian? You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.